Chapter 1. The Roaring Dragon Mainland. On the bustling streets of the imperial city of Longyuan country, the citizens stood orderly on both sides of the road, cheering excitedly as they welcomed the triumphant return of General Yun Luo. General Yun Luo could be considered a legend of Longyuan country. He had guarded the borders for many years, to the extent that none of the neighboring countries dared to invade him. Not long ago, he had even taken over 4 countries and made them vassal states of Longyuan country. When the emperor heard of this, he was extremely pleased. Not only did he summon him back to the court to reward him, he even gave him a blank imperial decree. With this blank imperial decree, it was equivalent to the emperor agreeing to any of his conditions. However, the victorious General Yun Luo did not go to the court to meet the emperor. Instead, he hurriedly rushed back to the general's mansion. The soldiers following closely behind him were all silent. No one knew better than them the reason why General Yun Luo was in such a hurry to return home. All of this was because of that useless first mistress of the Yun family. It was said that during the years that General Yun Luo had been guarding the borders, that useless person had caused a lot of trouble. She was usually arrogant and domineering, but not long ago, she had committed a scandal of snatching a handsome man on the street, causing her fiancé, the crown prince, to break off the engagement. Unable to take the blow, she chose to hang herself to end her life. If she had really died, then the general's mansion would have one less source of trouble. Unfortunately, that useless person did not die. Not only was she rescued, she seemed to have changed into a completely different person. She locked herself in her room for half a month and did not go out. Hence, when General Yun Luo returned to the city in triumph, he hurriedly rushed back to the general's mansion. At this time, on top of a rockery in the general's mansion, a young girl dressed in white was leaning lazily against a rock with her hands behind her head. Her eyes were half closed as she looked at the bright sunlight in the sky. I didn't think that time would pass so quickly. I've already been in this mainland for more than half a month. Fortunately, in this half a month, I've completely accepted the memories of the original owner of this body and understand what kind of place this is. Half a month ago, she had been doing experiments in the medical laboratory of Huaxia University when she accidentally caused an explosion. When she woke up, she found herself in an unfamiliar world. Yun Luofeng had the same name as when she was in Huaxia. The difference was that she was a top student of Huaxia University and a proud disciple of her teacher. As for this Yun Luofeng, he was a famous useless person. He was neither literate nor skilled in martial arts. He could not even gather qi, let alone become a true martial practitioner. In this world where the strong ruled, a useless person who could not become a martial practitioner would be ridiculed and scolded. However, not only did this wastrel have a grandfather who was a general, even the crown prince, who was the dream lover of thousands of girls in Longyuan country, was betrothed to her. However, this good-for-nothing was not satisfied with having such a perfect fiancé like the crown prince. He actually dared to flirt with a man from a good family on the street. Yun Crown Yun Ling Luofeng Chan Chan. With Yun Crown, Yun Xian Luofeng King Wang Yun Luofeng Divine General Luofeng of Yang sex, Shi Palace of Yun Luofeng Dynasty Shi Country and had. Yun Hu Yun Empire Luofeng. And all. Yun had Yun Yuns of Luo. However, no one knew that after Yun Luofeng was rescued, she had already lost her life in the Yellow Springs. Right now, her body had already been replaced by a soul from China. Chapter 2. Snatching a handsome man in public? Is that really the case? The young girl slowly sat up on the rockery and her lips curled into a devilish smile. If that man had not had a similar build to the crown prince and was wearing his clothes, Yun Luofeng, who was deeply in love with the crown prince, would not have mistaken him for someone else. She would not have impulsively grabbed him, and ended up being accused of taking liberties with a handsome man. Of course, if that was all there was to it, the crowd would not have misunderstood the relationship between Yun Luofeng and that man. The main reason was that the man had started to shout and scream after she had grabbed him. He claimed that the eldest lady of the Yun family had been pestering him endlessly, and was now trying to snatch him away as her male pet. Yun Luofeng was not good with words and in her panic, she had lost the ability to defend herself. Hence, her silence had proven her guilt. The young girl sighed in her heart at the thought of this. This Yun Luofeng is the daughter of the general, but she's too stupid. She couldn't even see through such a simple framing and was delusional enough to use her own life to win back the Crown Prince's heart. If it wasn't for the Crown Prince's orders, who would dare to wear his clothes and parade around the streets? The Crown Prince Gao Ling was the most handsome man in Long Yuan country. He was gifted and had outstanding abilities. Based on his status, how could he be willing to marry a good-for-nothing? Hence, she could understand Gao Ling's grievances. However, what she could not understand was that Gao Ling had framed Yun Luofeng for taking liberties with a handsome man in order to protect his own reputation. This had caused her reputation to be ruined in Long Yuan country. As such, even if he wanted to call off the engagement, no one would sympathize with Yun Luofeng. Just then Yun Luofeng's personal servant, Qing Yan, hurriedly ran over. Her initially flustered little face lit up with joy when she saw the young girl sitting on the rockery. She hurriedly ran up to her and panted, "My lady, the general has returned. He has ordered you to meet him in the study." Grandfather has returned? Yun Luofeng was shocked. How could she have forgotten that today was the day that the great general of Yun Luo would return in triumph? Not too long ago, the original owner of this body had been filled with anticipation for this day to arrive. Who would have thought that her grandfather, whom she had missed for 10 years, would be buried under these people's evil schemes? "Let's go, bring me to see grandfather." She returned to her senses and pinched Qing Yan's tasty little cheeks, which were as tasty as an apple. A devilish smile hung on her peerlessly beautiful face. Then, without waiting for Qing Yan to react, she walked towards the study room. In the study room of the general's mansion, a white-haired old man sat expressionlessly on a chair. He had a serious expression on his face as he looked at the white-robed young girl standing below him. Yun Luofeng, who was standing below, yawned lazily. She had been in the study for an hour, but during this time, General Yun Luo hadn't said a single word. He just looked at her expressionlessly. Seeing that General Yun Luo hadn't said anything, Yun Luofeng naturally wouldn't speak first. "I've heard about the immoral things you've done recently. Don't you want to give me an explanation?" In the end, it was General Yun Luo who lost his cool and asked sternly with a dark expression, "What kind of explanation do you want from me?" Yun Luofeng chuckled. "If you choose to believe the rumors of the outside world and not your own granddaughter, then whatever you hear is the truth. There is no need for me to explain." Impudence. General Yun slammed his hand on the desk. The desk was smashed into two with a loud bang and was sacrificed gloriously in the old man's rage. Chapter 3. Is this how you treat your grandfather? Grandfather? Yun Luofeng sneered and curled his lips. "You've been guarding the borders for 10 years. When have you ever cared about this granddaughter of yours? When I was being bullied and humiliated here, who stood up for me? When I was being framed and hoped that my family would stand up to protect me, where were you? If General Yun Luofeng had not been guarding the borders for 10 years, how could the original Yun Luofeng have lived so miserably? He had even been framed and had lost his reputation. So towards this grandfather who had left home when she was 4 and never returned, she felt resentment in her heart. It was precisely because of the resentment of the original owner of this body that she had said these words in front of the old man. However, after Yun Luofeng had said these words, her entire body relaxed. She knew that this was because she had said what the original owner of this body wanted to say, so the last remnant of her will in her body had disappeared. The girl's accusatory voice calmed the furious Yun Luofeng down. His old body slumped on the wooden chair, a bitter smile on his face. He knew that he owed this granddaughter far too much over the years, especially when her words just now were like a heavy stick, smashing fiercely into his heart, making it difficult to bear the bitterness in his heart. He could not help but sigh deeply. Since ancient times, loyalty and filial piety were difficult to achieve at the same time. For the sake of his loyalty to the emperor, he had left behind his 4-year-old granddaughter to go to the borders. He had been gone for 10 years. She, who had no talent for cultivation, what kind of life had she led in these 10 years? Yet, as soon as he returned, he did not ask about right or wrong and blamed his granddaughter for those rumors. "Fenger." Yun Luofeng raised his calloused hand, trembling as he stretched it towards Yun Luofeng. But in the end he still weakly put it down. "Grandfather has let you down, and let down the entire Yun family. Your parents sacrificed themselves for the country, but grandfather was unable to take good care of you. In an instant, the originally high-spirited General Yun Luofeng had clearly aged a few years. The reason why he had been so angry before was because he hated iron for not becoming steel. But he seemed to have forgotten that this girl had lost her parents at the age of 3, and he had left the Yun family when she was 4. She had never been disciplined since she was young, so how much hope could she give him? He vaguely remembered that when he was about to leave, little Maple, who was still 4 years old, had tugged at his clothes and cried, asking him not to leave. In the end, for the sake of the safety of the citizens of Longyuan Nation, he decided to leave her. If there's nothing else, I'll go back and rest first. Yun Luofeng sleepily blinked his eyes and said lazily. Guilt surfaced in Yun Luo's eyes when he saw the young lady's indifferent expression. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but all the words seemed to be stuck in his throat. He could not make a single sound. Go. In the end, he sighed softly and waved his hand powerlessly. These 2 words seemed to have used up all of his strength, causing him to close his eyes in exhaustion. At this time, Great General Yun Luo no longer had the high-spirited spirit of the battlefield. Instead, he looked like an old man with 1 foot in the grave. Yun Luofeng couldn't bear to see him like this. But in the end, she did not say anything and turned to leave the study. When the figure in white disappeared, Yun Luo opened his eyes. A trace of bitterness hung at the corner of his lips as he faced the empty study and said, Qingye, was I really wrong? Chapter 4. The secret door of the study opened, and the man slowly slid his wheelchair to Yun Luo's side. This was a man who was as elegant as a song. His handsome face carried a hint of sadness, and his skin was very white, but it was sickly white, making people feel pity for him. It was a pity that such an elegant and calm man had to sit in a wheelchair. His sickly body seemed to be unable to bear the burden. Father, you left home when she was 4, so you don't know the humiliation she has suffered all these years. As for me, even though I am her uncle due to certain reasons, I am unable to stand up for her and protect her. This is also the reason why she is so indifferent today. The man's voice was like a sweet spring, refreshing the heart. However, if anyone else was here and heard the way this man addressed Yun Luo, they would definitely be shocked. Everyone knew that Great General Yun Luo had 2 sons. These 2 sons were more talented than the other, especially the second young master of the Yun family, Yun Qingye. At the age of 15, he had reached the peak of the intermediate martial artist, and was only a step away from breaking through to become a high martial artist. One must know that there were only 2 high martial artists in Longyuan country. One was the great general of the Yun family, Yun Luo, and the other was the strongest of the imperial family. However, which of these 2 did not reach the threshold of breaking through to the high martial artist at the age of 40? And Yun Qingye was only 12 years old at that time. Reaching the peak of the intermediate martial artist at the age of 12 was something to be proud of. However, the once successful Yun Qingye seemed to have forgotten one thing. The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. In a competition, he defeated his opponent, but it attracted the revenge of his opponent's family. In the end, he died in the forest. However, no matter how much people thought about it, they would never have thought that the already deceased Yun Qingye was actually still alive. Qingye, you have worked hard all these years. Yun Luo laughed bitterly and said guiltily, if it wasn't for the entire Yun family, you wouldn't have hidden yourself. That power is too powerful. If they knew that you are still alive, they would definitely not let you go, and even the entire Yun family would not be spared. Yun Qingye slightly lowered her eyes, concealing the sadness in them. Using a calm and indifferent tone, she said, so what if I am alive? What's the difference between me and being dead now? My strength has been completely crippled, and I can only drag this broken body to drag out an ignoble existence. My own niece is being bullied and humiliated outside, yet I am unable to step forward to help her. If I was still the same me from 10 years ago, even if you weren't in the Yun family, no one would dare to harm Xiaofeng'er. However, for the sake of the entire Yun family, I cannot let anyone know that I am still alive. Back then, he had been hunted down by that faction, and he had managed to escape with his heavily injured body. Not long after, news of his death had spread, but that faction did not believe that he had died. Every day, they would send people to the Yun family to observe. Thus, he had hidden in a secret chamber, and he had hidden for more than 10 years. After living in darkness for more than 10 years, not only did his condition not improve, it even showed signs of worsening. What caused him to feel even more despair was that even though he'd escaped pursuit, his dantian had been crippled, causing all his strength to vanish. Moreover, he was unable to cultivate anymore. If it wasn't for the fact that his father had already lost his brother, he wouldn't have had the heart to let the old man send his black hair off again. Perhaps he wouldn't have wanted to live in this world any longer. Qingya. Hearing Yun Qingya's words, Yun Luo was silent for a moment before saying, "Even though outsiders cannot know that you are still alive, Xiao Feng'er is your niece after all. Moreover, she has grown up now. It's time for her to know the existence of an uncle like you." Chapter 5. This continent is called the Roaring Dragon Continent. On this continent, martial arts are respected, and those who practice martial arts are called spiritualists. Spiritualists are divided into several levels, namely beginner spiritualist, middle spiritualist, high spiritualist, earth spiritualist, heavenly spiritualist, venerable spiritualist, and holy spiritualist. Each level is further divided into low, middle, high, and peak. However, the strongest person in Longyuan country is the high martial practitioner, and there are only 2 people who are high martial practitioners. One is my cheap grandfather, and the other is the strongest person in the royal family. On the bed, the young girl opened her eyes and sorted out the information she had gathered over the past few days. She sighed softly. It's a pity that this body's aptitude is not good enough, and it cannot become a cultivator. On this mainland where martial arts are respected, those who cannot cultivate are all useless. It was not that the original owner of this body had not tried to cultivate, but every time she started to absorb the surrounding spiritual energy, she would feel a sharp pain all over her body and break out in cold sweat. In the end, she could only give up. Fortunately, the previous Yun Luofeng was familiar with the cultivation method, so it was convenient for her. Just as Yun Luofeng tried to absorb the spiritual energy, she felt a sharp pain in her body, causing her to tremble and break out in cold sweat. No, I must not give up. If I cannot enter the path of cultivation, on this mainland where the strong are respected, I can only wait for death unless I live in humiliation. And I have never been willing to be a useless person. At the door, General Yun Luo, who was just about to push the door open, seemed to sense something. His hand stopped just as he was about to touch the door. Then the young girl's sonorous voice rang out in his ears, as if a hand was slapping his heart fiercely. Sigh. Yun Luo retracted his hand. In his eyes, besides guilt, there was also a touch of heartache. This girl had worked so hard for cultivation, but he had actually believed the rumors and misunderstood her. Not only did he not care about her, but he had also blamed her, hurting her heart. Lord General. Just as Yun Luo was feeling guilty, the housekeeper hurried over from behind, cupped his fists and said, "His Highness the Crown Prince is here to pay a visit. He is now waiting for you in the main hall." The Crown Prince is here to pay a visit? Yun Luo thought for a moment, looked at the tightly shut door and said in a low voice, "Pass down the order. No one is allowed to disturb the first mistress." "Yes, my lord." Yun Luofeng had sensed Yun Luo's arrival, but she was in so much pain that she couldn't speak. How could she have the leisure to pay attention to him? If someone was here right now, they would definitely be shocked by the current Yun Luofeng. The girl's white clothes were stained with blood, and the pores on her body were constantly dripping with beads of blood. She looked like a bloody person bathing in a pool of blood, and she looked exceptionally terrifying. Buzz. Just as Yun Luofeng was feeling dizzy from the excessive blood loss, a sound exploded in her head, causing her consciousness to instantly return to its previous state of clarity. Chapter 6. Master, you really are reckless. If I hadn't woken up in time, I'm afraid you would have lost your life here today. A soft voice reverberated in Yun Luofeng's mind. Then her mind went blank. When she regained her senses, she found herself in a small and narrow piece of land. Standing in front of her was a little boy dressed in white. He looked like a jade sculpture, like a celestial child. It was obvious that the voice that had appeared in Yun Luofeng's mind had come from this little boy. "Master, long time no see. I've missed you so much." Seeing Yun Luofeng's appearance, the little boy smiled adorably, revealing 2 canine teeth. He happily flew towards her. Thump! Unexpectedly, when the young girl saw his movements, she hurriedly leaned to the side and dodged. The little boy didn't have time to stop in his tracks. He stumbled and fell to the ground, falling face first. Then, he got up and stared at Yun Luofeng with resentment in his eyes. Master, you are so cruel. Wait. Yun Luofeng interrupted the little boy's words. She frowned and asked, Who are you? Where is this place? Do we know each other? Master, have you forgotten about me? When the little boy heard this, he immediately curled his lips and was about to cry. If you hadn't picked me up from the library, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to meet you. I didn't think that in just over half a month, you'd already forgotten about me? Library? Yun Luofeng was completely dumbfounded. What was this fellow talking about? What library? Master, I'm the guardian spirit of the Divine Medicine Codex. You were the one who picked me up from Huaxia University's library. The Divine Medicine Codex. Boom! Like a bolt of lightning striking down, Yun Luofeng was stunned on the spot. She had inadvertently picked up the Divine Medicine Codex in a corner of the school library. There were no records of this Divine Medicine Codex in the library, so the old man who guarded the library had given this Divine Medicine Codex to her. However, she did not know why this Divine Medicine Codex could not be opened. She had used all her methods to no avail. Who would have thought that after transmigrating, the Divine Medicine Codex would also follow her here? Moreover, there was an additional little boy who called himself the guardian spirit of the Divine Medicine Codex? Why are you here? Yun Luofeng returned to her senses and asked. What she wanted to ask was why had she transmigrated to this mainland? Yun Luofeng believed that this matter was definitely related to this little fellow. Master, you were experimenting in the laboratory and caused an explosion. It was me who brought you to the Roaring Dragon continent. Otherwise, you would have been dead. The little boy raised his head proudly, looking as if he was asking for credit. Then, as if remembering something, he became dispirited again. It's a pity that spirit chi doesn't exist in Huaxia. I don't even have the ability to bring you into the divine grimoire world, much less cultivate there. Otherwise, your body wouldn't have been destroyed by that little explosion. Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows and his lips curled into a sinister smile. From what you're saying, you don't belong to Huaxia. The little boy nodded and replied seriously. I belong to the Roaring Dragon continent and ended up in Huaxia due to an accident. I was even picked up by you unintentionally. However, Master, you were really in danger just now. If I hadn't stopped you, I'm afraid you would have bled to death. Chapter 7. I know, but if I was given another chance, I would still do the same thing. On the Roaring Dragon mainland, the weak are like ants. I, on the other hand, have finally been given a second chance at life. How can I give it up so easily? If I want to live, I can only become stronger. Hearing Yun Luofeng's voice, the little boy was stunned. When he lifted his eyes, he saw the young girl's flamboyant brows and the confidence that was radiating from her entire body. He could not help but stare dumbfounded. Master, if you want to become stronger, I can help you. The little boy's eyes slowly became determined. I must say, Master, you're very lucky to have obtained a body with such excellent qualities. Although everyone said that the original Yun Luofeng was a good-for-nothing, that was because no one could help her cultivate. In fact, it should be said that no one on the Roaring Dragon mainland can provide her with the correct cultivation method. If this body were to follow a normal person's cultivation method, her entire body would be in pain and it would be unbearable. If she were to forcefully cultivate, she would bleed incessantly and die from excessive blood loss. He paused before he continued. However, it's because you forcefully cultivated and caused her to bleed incessantly that I was able to form a blood contract with you. Otherwise, I'm afraid we wouldn't have met so soon. Hearing this, Yun Luofeng's heart skipped a beat and he asked, Can you really help me? The little boy nodded. Master, I'm the guardian spirit of the Divine Medicine Codex. Don't be fooled by my small stature. I've lived for many years and there's nothing in this world that I don't know. Also, Master, do you know what this place is? What? Yun Luofeng raised his brow as he asked. This is the spiritual medicine space. There's an extremely dense amount of spiritual energy in this space. Of course, other than being useful for medicinal herbs, This spiritual energy can also be absorbed by martial artists. If you pick medicinal herbs from the outside world and place them in the spiritual medicine space, those ordinary medicinal herbs will possess spiritual energy. Naturally, their effects will not be comparable to those of ordinary medicinal herbs. The little boy spoke proudly. Nowadays, spiritual energy in the Roaring Dragon mainland is extremely scarce, and it's impossible to cultivate any spiritual medicine. Therefore, if you take a spiritual medicine out, it will certainly cause a great sensation on the mainland. Yun Luofeng looked at the little boy. I only know that humans and spiritual beasts can cultivate, but I've never heard that medicinal herbs can absorb spiritual energy. Hearing this, the little boy was a little annoyed. He thought that Yun Luofeng did not believe him, and his delicate features flushed red with anger. I'm telling the truth. Medicinal herbs need to rely on the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to grow. But the spiritual energy on the continent is too little. It can't be compared to the past, so it has been many years since a medicinal herb has successfully grown into a spiritual medicine. Look at those doctors on the continent, they need a long time to heal an ordinary knife wound, and some even leave a scar. If that doctor has a spiritual medicine, no matter how deep the knife wound is, it can be healed immediately. This is the difference between spiritual medicine and ordinary medicinal herbs. The little boy was infuriated. Besides, healing is only one of the spiritual medicines. Some can assist in cultivation, and some can even help spiritualists break through directly. Help a spiritualist break through? This one has to admit that Yun Luofeng was tempted. His evil eyes flashed with light. The little fellow was still chattering away. Furthermore, even if one day your powers are crippled by someone, the spiritual medicine will be able to restore you to your peak strength. However, with your current strength, the spiritual medicine space can only open up such a small space. In the future, when you have a breakthrough in your powers, you will be able to own even more land. Chapter 8. Yun Luofeng had never imagined that the divine encyclopedia of medicine, that she had accidentally picked up, would bring her such great benefits. When can I start cultivating? She thought for a moment and asked. Clearly, to her, being able to cultivate was the most important thing right now. Master, I have a prescription here. Prepare the herbs and bathe in it for 5 consecutive days. After that, I will give you a suitable cultivation technique for you. The little fellow paused for a moment before continuing. This medicinal bath is to help you train your body, so no matter how painful it is, you must endure it. After 5 days you can start cultivating. Unfortunately, if you had the spiritual medicine now, you would not have to suffer for 5 days. Only 1 day would be enough. However, based on your current level of strength, you would need to spend 3 months to cultivate the spiritual medicine. This is too long for you. This meant that if the herbs were to be planted in the spiritual medicine space, they would need to wait for 3 months to cultivate the spiritual medicine. Hence, he had settled for the next best thing. I understand. Yun Luofeng took the prescription from the little boy. By the way, you still haven't told me your name? Master, my name is Xiao Mo. Don't forget my name in the future. Xiao Mo's face lit up with a bright smile as he spoke in his young voice. After keeping the prescription in her bosom, Yun Luofeng raised her head to look at Xiao Mo instantly. The boy's adorable smile entered her eyes, and she could not help but reach out to pinch the little fellow's pink cheeks. Her lips curled into a devilish smile. Xiao Mo, I've been here for too long. It's very easy for others to find me, so I don't know how to leave? The girl's palm was warm and the boy's cheeks turned bright red. When he heard the girl's words, he bit his lip and stared at her with large, watery eyes. Master, are you leaving so soon? It was not easy for me to see you, and no one will know your current situation. When you come to this place, it will be as if you're asleep in the eyes of outsiders. No one will think that you're already in the divine grimoire world. Yun Luofeng was silent for a moment before she asked, Then can you leave the divine grimoire world? Little Mo shook his head with a lonely look in his eyes. Master, I'm not a human nor am I a spiritual beast. I'm only a spiritual body born from the divine tome of medicine. I don't exist in this world. However, once you've become powerful enough, I can temporarily leave the divine tome of medicine and appear by your side. However, I can't be more than 100 meters away from you. Little Mo, let me ask you one last question. Why did you choose me? There were thousands of people in China. She didn't understand why the divine encyclopedia of medicine had chosen her in the end. I don't know. Little Mo's eyes were filled with confusion. Maybe it's because you chose me first. If it wasn't for you, I would still be stuck in the library. Maybe that's why I chose you. When Yun Luofeng left the world of the divine grimoire, she found herself lying on a bed with a book in her arms. The words Divine Grimoire of Medicine were clearly visible on the cover, which proved that everything that had happened before was not a dream. Miss, you're awake? The maidservant, Qing Yan, was overjoyed when she saw Yun Luofeng open her eyes. Then she seemed to remember something and her face fell. Miss, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince has arrived. The general has asked for you. I saw that you were taking a nap earlier, so I didn't disturb you. Now that you're awake, I should go and report to the general. Chapter 9. The Crown Prince? Yun Luofeng frowned and climbed out of bed. However, the moment she stood up, she could not help but freeze. If I remember correctly, she had been covered in blood due to her forced cultivation. However, she was now completely clean. Her white robes were clean and elegant as if they had been washed. What was going on? Yun Luofeng, who could not understand, decided to stop thinking about it. She laughed icily and said, Qing Yan, let's go. I'd like to know why the Crown Prince has come to the general's residence. Before Qing Yan could return to her senses, Yun Luofeng had already walked out of the room. After a while, Qing Yan slowly regained her composure and hurriedly chased after her. Her heart was filled with confusion. She did not know why, but ever since the young miss had failed to commit suicide, she seemed to have changed into another person. Even when she heard that the Crown Prince had come to visit, she was no longer as excited as before. Instead, she gave off a very strange feeling. General Yun Luo was sitting upright in the great hall. His brows were tightly furrowed and there was a trace of worry on his face. Beside him was an old man and a young man. The young man was about 18 or 19 years old. He had handsome features and an extraordinary air about him. He wore a long navy blue robe which stretched his body like a sharp long sword. It seemed as if he could kill without leaving a trace. An old man stood behind the young man. In contrast to the young man's composure, the old man's face was ashen and his eyes were filled with an uncontrollable rage. General Yun, the Crown Prince has been waiting here for a long time. I wonder when your daughter will come out? Yun Luo was a little hesitant. I've already sent a servant girl to inform the Crown Prince. I think it won't be long before she arrives. Of course, Yun Luo did not tell the old man that he had also instructed the servant girl not to disturb Yun Luofeng if she was busy. Once she was done, he would inform her to see the Crown Prince. So when Qing Yan saw Yun Luofeng taking her afternoon nap, she obeyed his orders and waited for her to wake up. How long do you think it will take? The young miss of the Yun family sure is arrogant. She actually made His Royal Highness wait for her for 2 hours. The old man scoffed and spoke irritably. Yun Luo furrowed his brows and his eyes swept over the old man. My granddaughter has something important to do. That's why I asked you to wait for a while. If you don't want to wait, you can leave. Forgive me for not sending you off. Yun Luo's words angered the old man so much that his face turned red. His tone became even more furious. Everyone knows that Yun Luofeng only knows how to chase after the Crown Prince all day long. Besides chasing after a man, what else could she do? Now that our Crown Prince is here, does she still dare to not come out? Wasn't he just loosening the reins only to grasp them better? Did she think that the Crown Prince would give her an extra glance just because she was purposely avoiding him? Didn't he see what she had done previously? Snatching a man on the street. He simply has no integrity and is shameless to the extreme. Bang! Yun Luo slammed his fist on the table and stared coldly at the elder. His eyes were filled with rage. Jinglin, my Yun Luo's granddaughter, is not for others to criticize. What's more, what evidence do you have to prove that my granddaughter has committed such a scandal? Just based on that man's one-sided statement? If I hear you say another word about her in the future, I will order the 1,000,000 soldiers in my hands to trample your residence to the ground. After all, I've already done such a thing once. I don't mind doing it a second time. Chapter 10. Jinglin's expression changed. It was obvious that he remembered the incident that had shaken the entire Longyuan country over 10 years ago. That year, Yun Luofeng's parents had led the soldiers to battle against the enemy country. In the end, Prime Minister Mu had accidentally leaked information and the enemy had obtained it, causing her parents to die tragically. Because of this, Yun Luofeng, who was grieving, recalled all the soldiers and destroyed the entire Prime Minister's residence, causing a huge uproar in Longyuan country. In the end, it was the Emperor of Longyuan country who had stepped forward to settle the matter. Although the Emperor had asked Prime Minister Mu to visit Yun Luofeng's parents' graves every year to express his apologies and compensate for their losses, everyone knew that the Emperor was biased towards the Prime Minister's residence. There was no other reason other than the fact that Prime Minister Mu's daughter was the Emperor's favorite concubine. Hence, Prime Minister Mu, who should have been sentenced to death, was still alive and well. He had even been promoted every year to the position of Prime Minister. As for visiting the graves every year, it was already good enough that he did not step on the graves. Did they expect him to visit the graves? Sir, it seems like your anger has been burning up recently. You need to cool it down. At this moment, a burst of laughter suddenly sounded from outside the hall. The young girl was dressed in white, the smile on her lips revealing a hint of laziness. Her eyebrows were slanted upwards, looking demonic and undisciplined. Her eyes stared at the furious Yun Luofeng with a smile that did not seem like a smile. From the beginning to the end, she did not even look at the youth sitting in the main hall, as if she did not even notice his existence. The youth, who had been quietly sipping his tea, finally raised his head after hearing Yun Luofeng's voice. His gaze swept across her body, his eyes filled with regret. It has to be said that Yun Luofeng was extremely beautiful. It was a pity that she was a big-breasted but brainless love-struck fool. She did not even have the slightest bit of talent for cultivation. How could such an idiotic girl have the right to stand by his side? He was destined to be a dragon among men. As for her, she was just a wastrel that everyone looked down on. If he were to marry her, his reputation would be ruined. Ahem! Yun Luofeng coughed dryly, his face carrying a tinge of awkwardness. Fenger, you're here? This damned girl, he was angry because of her. But she actually asked him to cool his anger? Was there a need to be so infuriating? In reality, Yun Luofeng had been at the door for a while. Therefore, he had heard most of what the old man and Mu Lin had to say. Due to the old man's indiscriminate questioning at the beginning, she did not have a good impression of this cheap grandfather. But she didn't expect that the old man would protect her in front of others. Therefore, the feeling of having a grandfather seemed not bad. Yun Luofeng's lips curled up. I woke up, so I naturally came. Wake up. Yun Luo's old face became even more awkward. This girl had stayed in the room for so long, so she was actually sleeping? Hee, Jinglin said mockingly. I've said it before, Yun Luofeng can't possibly have anything important to do. So the important thing you're talking about is sleeping? You even made our crown prince wait for so long. Yun Luofeng glanced at him. Sleep is the most important thing in life. If I don't wake up, I won't see anyone. Fenger. Yun Luofeng pretended to scold him. Then he turned his gaze towards the youth. Your Highness the Crown Prince, you don't come here for no reason. You've not come to my general's residence today for something as simple as tea, right? The youth put down the teacup in his hand. There was no emotion in his eyes. In a cold voice he said, General Yun Luo, this time, this crown prince has come to the general's residence to break off the engagement. You should know that your granddaughter's body has some problems. If she doesn't have the help of a doctor, she will be a wastrel for the rest of her life. So, as a condition, I will have Jinglin do his best to help your daughter cultivate. I can't guarantee that she will become a genius, but at least she can be like a normal person and not a wastrel. Chapter 11. When he heard the word annulment, Yun Luo's expression did not look too good. However, the young man's next words moved Yun Luo's heart. After all, Yun Luofeng's inability to cultivate had always been a thorn in his side. If he could help her cultivate like a normal person, even if her talent was average, he would have no regrets. General Yun Luo, Jinglin scoffed coldly. The imperial physicians of the imperial family only treat the members of the imperial family. If the crown prince had not come looking for me, I would not have helped you. I hope that you will cherish this opportunity. If you miss this opportunity, I'm afraid that Yun Luofeng will never be able to cultivate again. Yun Luo furrowed his brows as if he was deep in thought. Just as he was about to make a decision, the The young girl's clear and melodious voice rang out, breaking his train of thought. Grandfather, I don't need anyone else to diagnose my body. Before Yun Luo could make a decision, she had already given up on her decision. Yun Luofeng. The young man could no longer sit still and rose to his feet. His handsome face was curled into a cold smile, no longer as calm and composed as before. Do you like to pester me so much? Are you willing to be a good-for-nothing just for the sake of me? Gao Ling's expression was extremely ugly, and he clenched his fists tightly. If it were not for the fact that Yun Luo was here, his fist would have landed on Yun Luofeng's body. Yun Luofeng looked Gao Ling up and down, and the corners of his lips curled into a devilish smile. Your Highness, aren't you thinking too highly of yourself? A man like you who doesn't have a good figure or looks, even if you were to be sent to my bed, I wouldn't think highly of you. You. Gao Ling's expression turned even more ashen, and a cold aura emanated from his body. His eyes were as sharp as swords as he glared at Yun Luofeng and said icily, You're shameless and despicable. General Yun, this is the granddaughter you've raised. He was the most handsome man in Longyuan country, and this woman had actually said that he had no body and no looks? After all, the number of women who wanted to marry him in Longyuan country could form a line from here to the spiritual beast forest. That's right, it's true that I didn't teach my granddaughter well. For the sake of Longyuan country, I left my 4-year-old granddaughter behind and went to the borders. I've been gone for 10 years. How do you expect me to take care of her? Yun Luo had been frightened by Yun Luofeng's shocking words, but when he regained his composure, he heard Gao Ling's accusation. His expression immediately darkened. For the sake of Longyuan country, he had left his home for 10 years. In the end, the crown prince of Longyuan country even scolded him for not teaching his granddaughter well. How could he not be bitterly disappointed? Gao Ling's expression changed slightly. He knew that he had said the wrong thing. Hence, he turned his attention back to Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng, this crown prince doesn't care that you're a good-for-nothing. I'm still willing to fulfill my promise to marry you. But you, on the other hand, have committed such a despicable act. Hence, even if this crown prince wants to break off the engagement with you, you're asking for it. But on account of the fact that the general has worked hard for the Longyuan country, this crown prince wants to help you cultivate. But you chose to continue pestering this prince. You should know your own limits. Things that you can't think about will never be yours. Gao Ling laughed icily. His words were sharp and full of thorns. In reality, Crown Prince Gao Ling's temper was well known for being good-natured. It was only when he faced Yun Luofeng that he would go crazy. Who asked this good-for-nothing to be his fiancée? And why did he hate her so much? All these years, whenever he saw her, he would easily fly into a rage. There was no way he could control himself. Unfortunately, Yun Luofeng was like a dogskin plaster that couldn't be shaken off. Chapter 12. Does the Crown Prince not understand human language? Yun Luofeng's brows raised slightly. His slightly raised gaze swept towards Jinglin, who was standing to the side. The corners of his lips still hung in that evil smile. I refused his treatment not because I wanted to pester you, but based on his medical skills, he simply doesn't have the ability to cure my constitution. According to Xiao Mo, her inability to cultivate was not caused by an illness but because her constitution was too special. Therefore, no matter how skilled Jinglin's medical skills were, it was impossible for him to treat her like a normal person. Jinglin's gaze suddenly became extremely fierce and he said coldly, Yun Luofeng, I would even think that it's a waste of medicine to treat a good-for-nothing like you. If it weren't for the Crown Prince's kindness, do you think I would have bothered with you? Since you don't need my treatment, then you can only be a good-for-nothing for the rest of your life. You're really stupid to give up such a good opportunity. Bang! Yun Luofeng slammed his fist on the table. This time he used a lot of strength and the table broke into two in an instant. The tea spilled all over the floor. Jinglin, what do you think this place is? No matter how good-for-nothing my granddaughter is, with the millions of lions in the Yun family supporting her, no one would dare to bully her. Good, very good. Jinglin was so angry that he laughed and said fiercely, Yun Luofeng, don't regret looking down on us royal doctors. When you're seriously injured and can't be treated, don't come to the palace to ask us for help. Hee. Yun Luofeng laughed coldly and curled the corners of his lips. However, there was a layer of anger on his face. 10 years ago my second son Yunqinga was seriously injured. Originally, you royal doctors could have treated him, but in the end, I went to the palace to ask for your help and not a single one of you helped. Not only did you kill my eldest son, but you also killed my second son. Furthermore, if you really wanted to help my granddaughter, why didn't you help her when her body had problems and she couldn't cultivate? Why did you have to stand out now and pretend to be kind and righteous? So, do you think that if I'm seriously injured or infected with some kind of illness in the future, I will put down my pride and ask you for help? Hearing the old fellow's hate-filled voice, a cold light flashed across Yun Luofeng's eyes. It looks like after these people leave, she will have to properly interrogate this old fellow about the deaths of her father and second uncle. Alright. Jinglin gritted his teeth. Your Highness, I don't think you should waste so much effort on a piece of trash like Yun Luofeng. Not a single member of the Yun family can be saved. Humph. Once he had said his piece, he straightened his sleeves, turned around and walked out of the hall. However, just as he reached the door of the hall, he spat out fiercely with his back facing Yun Luo. Yun Luo, if your granddaughter ever needs treatment, even if you kneel down and beg me, I won't help the Yun family. Get lost. You don't need to worry about my granddaughter. As long as I'm still alive, I won't let anyone hurt her. Yun Luo's face was full of anger, and he even cursed. Clearly, he was greatly angered by Jinglin. Gao Ling glanced at Yun Luo and didn't say anything else. He quickly walked out, but before he left, he couldn't help but glance at Yun Luofeng. His eyes were still filled with disgust. Old master. Call me grandpa. Yun Luo angrily sat down and glared at Yun Luofeng as he spoke in a bad mood. Yun Luofeng rubbed his nose. Grandfather, what happened to my parents and second uncle back then? Tell me about it. Sigh. Hearing this, Yun Luo instantly became dispirited. Then, as if recalling the past, his eyes were filled with grief. It's a long story. Back then, your father was the junior general of Longyuan country, and was sent by His Majesty to fight against the enemy's army. In the end, the current Prime Minister Mu leaked information about the battle, causing your parents to be killed by the enemy's highly skilled fighters. Both of them died in battle. Because of this, I fought with that dog Mu Xingqiu and even sent troops to flatten his mansion. Chapter 13. What happened to second uncle? Yun Luofeng was silent for a while, then asked, Is his death related to Jinglin? Yun Luofeng laughed bitterly. Jinglin did not kill your second uncle. He just did not save him. Your second uncle was once the #1 genius of the Yun family. He achieved success at a young age and reached the peak of the middle spirit realm, causing a sensation in the entire Longyuan country. However, there was one time when he fought with someone and defeated his opponent. That person was too proud and arrogant. How could he accept his defeat? Thus, he sent experts to kill your second uncle, to wash away the shame of his defeat. As he said this, Yun Luofeng clenched his fists, his old body trembling non-stop, his eyes filled with endless hatred. Even though your second uncle was talented, he was too young and had not grown up yet. How could he defeat so many experts? But he still risked his life to escape. When he crawled back home covered in blood, I went to the palace to beg the royal doctors to save his life, but they were all stopped by Jinglin, who did not allow them to treat your second uncle. I even knelt down, but it did not help. At first, Yun Luofeng did not think of letting Yun Qingya pretend to be dead, so he went to the palace to ask for help. Pretending to be dead was later suggested by Yun Qingya herself. If that force knew that he was still alive, not only would they continue to send experts, they would not even let the Yun family go. The Yun family was very strong in the secular world, but compared to that force it was not even worth mentioning. Jinglin and my Yun family have a grudge? This was what Yun Luofeng wanted to ask the most. Yun Luofeng nodded. Jinglin is related to Prime Minister Mu. He is the granddaughter of that dog Mu Xingqiu, Mu Wushuang's master. Hearing this, Yun Luofeng finally understood. The original owner of this body only knew how to chase after the crown prince, and did not care about anything else. Thus, she had only just found out about the relationship between Jinglin and the Mu family. What about the emperor? Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows. My parents sacrificed for the country, and you sacrificed your whole life for Longyuan country. But when my second uncle was seriously injured, did he not say anything? Yun Luo's eyes darkened. Seeing his expression, Yun Luofeng could roughly guess what was going on. He couldn't help but laugh coldly. Why would you fight for an emperor like this? Fenger, you're wrong. I'm fighting for my country, not for the emperor, but for the people of Long Yuan country. The common people. Yun Luofeng smiled coldly. For the common people, you can give up on avenging my parents? He could also give up on his second uncle? Grandfather, I'm different from you. I don't care about the common people, and I don't care about the common people either. If anyone dares to touch my loved ones, even if it means going against the heavens, I will avenge them. The girl's eyes were filled with arrogance and her words were unruly, scaring General Yun Luo so much that his eyes widened. It was as if this was the first time he had seen his granddaughter. Grandfather, you serve the common people, but have the common people ever pitied you? After your parents died in battle, did anyone come out to destroy Mu clan with you? Aside from your army, who helped you? When second uncle was heavily injured, did any of the commoners stand up and plead for him? No. Then why did you sacrifice your whole life for them? Yun Luofeng fell silent. He knew that Yun Luofeng was right. He had sacrificed so much for Long Yuan country, but when he needed help, not a single person had helped him. As a meritorious minister, your son and daughter-in-law sacrificed themselves for the country. But when your second son needed help, the emperor only needed an imperial decree to solve the problem, but he didn't do it. This kind of emperor is not worthy of your loyalty. Chapter 14. That's right, Yun Luo laughed bitterly. I've done my best for the country, but he did nothing to save me that year. Furthermore, in the 10 years that I've been away from Long Yuan country, he hasn't even taken good care of you. I've already lost your parents for the sake of this country. I can't lose you as well. It's a pity that I'm getting old and won't be able to protect you for much longer. If only your second uncle could recover, perhaps you could still live under his protection. Yun Luo did not dare to imagine how this girl would survive on the continent if one day his oil lamp ran out. What did you just say? In an instant, Yun Luofeng felt that there was something wrong with her ears. She asked again in disbelief, You said second uncle? Didn't second uncle already? Fenger, you were too young back then. There are some things that I can't let you know, or else your second uncle's life will be in danger once again. Yun Luo sighed and said, Actually, your second uncle is not dead. He has always been alive, but unfortunately, after your second uncle died in the explosion, the people from that power kept their eyes on the Yun family, and only withdrew a few years ago. Even so, I do not dare to let your second uncle appear, otherwise if the people from that power find out, they will definitely come to kill your second uncle again. And even the Yun family will not be let off. What happened that year was not only a pain in Yun Qingya's heart, but also a wound in his heart. If it wasn't for Yun Qingya's accident, the Yun family would not have fallen to such a state today. Although he held great power in his hands, this power still belonged to the royal family. If he were to return it, he would have no choice but to do so. Grandfather, is what you said true? Second uncle is still alive? A light flashed in Yun Luofeng's eyes. She had always been filled with curiosity towards this second uncle. Now that she knew that he was still alive, how could she not be excited? Your second uncle is indeed not dead, but his body is crippled. Actually, if those royal doctors had been able to help, your second uncle would not have become like this. Now he can't walk, his dantian has been crippled, and he will never be able to recover. Grandfather, I want to see second uncle. Yun Luofeng raised her beautiful face and said firmly. With the divine grimoire of medicine in hand, no matter what kind of difficult disease she had, she was confident that she could cure it. However, before that, she had to see Yun Qingya first before she could use the right medicine. Inside the dark and damp secret chamber, a wave of humidity assaulted Yun Luofeng's face, causing him to frown slightly. Yun Luo, who was at the side, did not see her expression. He continued, All these years, in order to avoid the eyes and ears of that organization, your second uncle has always lived here. Every day, I would send a trusted aide to deliver food to him. As soon as he finished speaking, the two of them walked to the front of the stone room. Yun Luo pressed the switch on the wall, and with a clang the door of the stone room opened. The interior was not as humid as the outside, but it was clean and elegant, and the fragrance of sandalwood assailed the nostrils. On the wheelchair, a man was holding a book in his hands. The corners of his lips curled up slightly. Then, when he heard the sound of the stone door opening, he slowly raised his head. When his cold eyes saw the old man and the young man at the door, they gradually became warm. What an elegant and peerless man! When Yun Luofeng saw the handsome face of the man, he couldn't help but sigh. Grandfather. Everyone says that Crown Prince Gao Ling is the most handsome man in Long Yuan country. However, I think that this title is more suitable for second uncle. Compared to second uncle, Gao Ling is nothing. Chapter 15. You little girl, I haven't seen you for so many years and you've become so glib. I'm just a cripple now, how can I compare to others? Yun Qingya smiled and said helplessly. Second uncle, don't belittle yourself. Even the current you is not someone that Gao Ling can compare to. Furthermore, you will not sit in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. Ever since she entered the stone room, she had seen through Yun Qingya's condition. Even without the divine grimoire of medicine, with her medical skills from her previous life, treating his legs was not a problem. The only problem was restoring his dantian. A wry smile appeared on Yun Qingya's face. Little girl, the tendons in second uncle's legs are blocked. He doesn't even have the ability to stand up. Moreover, all of my strength has been crippled. Right now, I'm just a piece of trash that's trying to survive. Since when did the number one genius of the Long Yuan nation become so high-spirited and high-spirited? No matter where he went, he would always be the center of attention. Now it had only been a mere 10 years, but he had already worn down a person's will and made him look down on him like this. Yun Luofeng felt a little sad for the number one genius who had once been successful at a young age. I don't think anyone in this world is trash. Yun Luofeng smiled faintly. Even if you don't have the strength, you can still show it in other places. The prerequisite is that you have to stand up from this wheelchair. Grandfather, second uncle, actually all these years I have secretly taken a master and am learning medicine from him. I believe that in time, I will be able to help second uncle stand up again. The divine grimoire of medicine was of great importance. She could not casually say it even to her relatives, so Yun Luofeng lied. In any case, Yun Qingya had been in the stone room all these years, and Yun Luo was not in Long Yuan country. No one knew her true situation. Fenger, you said you're learning medicine? Yun Luo was overjoyed and then laughed out loud. Great, this is really great. If you can become a doctor, even if grandpa is no longer around, you won't be bullied by others with your medical skills. In the Longshao continent, not only spirit practitioners were respected. Even if you did not have the talent for cultivation, you could still live a prosperous life with great wisdom. Not to mention a respected doctor. Of course, if you were neither skilled in martial arts nor literature, then you would be a true cripple. Just like Yun Luofeng. Little girl, your grandfather is right. If you have medical skills, you can at least make friends with many experts in the future. Then you won't have to worry about surviving on this continent. Yun Qingya said with a smile. When they found out that Yun Luofeng was secretly learning medicine, the first thing they thought of was not Yun Qingya's body, but that Yun Luofeng would not be bullied in the future. Yun Luofeng's heart was filled with warmth. She looked at Yun Qingya and asked, Second uncle, although I can't guarantee you will be able to recover your strength, but I can let you. Yun, of good of Luo you, comma, many, of, Chapter 16. Yun Luo sighed as a hint of helplessness appeared on his elderly face. Little girl, your second uncle's situation is special. If the news that he's still alive gets out, it will definitely attract the strong cultivators of that organization. When that time comes, the Yun family will not be able to fight against those people. Hearing Yun Luo's dilemma, Yun Luofeng smiled evilly. This matter is simple. Grandfather, vacate the deserted back mountain of the Yun family, and secretly transport second uncle there when no one is paying attention. To the outside world, tell them that I'm recuperating in the back mountain. Therefore, don't let anyone disturb me. Everyone knew that Yun Luofeng's body was ill, causing her to be unable to cultivate. Therefore, if she were to say that she was recuperating in the back mountain, it would be very convincing. Xiao Feng'er, it's been hard on you. Yun Qingya raised her hand and stroked Yun Luofeng's head. There was a hint of heartache in her clear and cold eyes. You could have enjoyed a luxurious life in the Yun family, but you have to accompany me to live in an environment like the back mountain. It's fine if I really can't recover. After so many years, I've already accepted my fate. Accept his fate? Yun Luofeng looked at the man in front of him, who was as cold as an immortal. He felt that the word accept his fate should not have come out of his mouth. For such an outstanding man like him, he should be in high spirits like he was 10 years ago. Second uncle, I will do my best to heal you. After Yun Luofeng made up his mind, he turned his gaze towards Yun Luo. Grandfather, there's one more thing that the Yun family needs to take care of. Speak. For some reason, Yun Luo felt as if he could not see through his own granddaughter. This feeling made him feel very uncomfortable. He felt that he had missed out on too many things in the past 10 years. A cold light flashed through Yun Luofeng's eyes. Grandfather, have you heard of this saying? Great achievements overshadow the Lord. You have millions of troops in your hands, how can that dog emperor sleep at night? If you want the Yun family to live a peaceful life, you must give up this military power. Otherwise, it will definitely bring disaster to the Yun family. Over the past few days, Yun Luofeng had already understood the situation in this world. On this mainland, the imperial power was not supreme. There were powerful hidden families and forces above the imperial power. Even if those forces stomped their feet, the entire country would tremble. However, the current Yun Luofeng had no choice but to be wary of the dog emperor. At the very least, before she grew up, she could not directly clash with the imperial power. Overshadowing the master, these 4 words are not bad to describe it. Yun Luo laughed bitterly. His face was filled with helplessness. This time I've returned in triumph. Not only have I obtained His Majesty's commendation, but I've also obtained supreme glory. But so what? The more the people respect me, the more His Majesty fears me. Accompanying a ruler is like accompanying a tiger. This saying is useful in any dynasty. Grandfather, listen to me. Yun Luofeng gently stroked his chin, the smile on his lips revealing a touch of evil. Return the military power to the dog emperor immediately. It's enough for you to be a general with no real power and only an empty name. Even if you lose your military power, with your title as the second strongest man in Longyuan country, no one would dare to bully the Yun family. More importantly, only when Yun Luo returned her military power would she be able to develop her own forces with peace of mind. Yun Luo's heart trembled. His granddaughter was right. Even without the millions of troops, he was still the second strongest man in Longyuan country. As long as he was still alive, no one in Longyuan country would dare to bully the Yun family. Chapter 17. Seeing that Yun Luo had clearly been moved by his words, Yun Luofeng's smile became even more demonic. Handing over your military power on your own accord, and having your military power taken away have different effects. So, I want you to take this opportunity to ask that dog emperor for a death exemption medallion. Furthermore, help me ask for an imperial edict. The content of that edict states that I, Yun Luofeng, do not need to kneel in front of any member of the imperial family. Also, I'm going to call off my engagement. Yun Luofeng jumped in fright at her words and replied hesitantly, this death exemption medallion and annulment of the engagement are easy to handle. However, I'm afraid that the imperial edict won't be that easy. What a joke. Yun Luofeng laughed icily as her domineering aura erupted from her body. The space between her brows carried a stern air. I, Yun Luofeng, will not even kneel to the heavens. What right do that dog emperor and his descendants have to make me kneel? Even if it was the heavens, she would not kneel. What kind of domineering aura does one need to say something like that? Yun Luo and his son were dazed. It was as if this was the first time they had met Gu Ruoyun, and they were completely speechless. Ha ha ha. After a long pause, Yun Luo burst into laughter. His joyous laughter rang throughout the entire stone chamber. Good, you're indeed my granddaughter. My granddaughter should be this domineering. Don't worry. Grandfather will definitely take care of this matter for you. Didn't the emperor give me a blank imperial edict? When that time comes, Grandfather will use this blank imperial edict to ask for that imperial edict for you. Yun Luofeng only wanted that imperial edict. As for how Yun Luo was going to obtain it, that was none of her business. Grandfather, do you have any silver? After a moment's thought, Yun Luofeng turned towards the smiling old man and asked. The most important thing now was to increase her power. Only when she was powerful could she gain a foothold on this mainland. What do you need silver for? Perhaps Yun Luo was in a good mood because even his voice was filled with smiles. If there's anything you need to buy, I'll send someone to accompany you. Oh, it's like this. Yun Luofeng rubbed his nose. I need large amounts of medicinal ingredients to learn medicine, so I want to use the Yun family's money. Haha. Hearing this, Yun Luo's mood became even better. His face was full of joy as he said, "This is the key to the Yun family treasury. If you need money, you can go to the treasury and take as much as you have. Even if you take everything, it's fine." As he spoke, he threw a bunch of keys to Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng took the key, raised his eyebrows and said mockingly, "So generous? I can take the money from the treasury? When did you become so generous? I thought you would just send me away." The young girl's words were obviously filled with flattery and anyone could tell that she was joking. However, Yun Luo could not help but kick her as he was so angry that he laughed instead. "This damned girl, she actually dared to make fun of me. Don't run if you have the guts. If I don't spank your butt until it bleeds, I'll change my surname to yours." After hearing the old man's words, Yun Luofeng staggered and almost fell to the ground. However, she still rubbed her but that had been hurt by Yun Luofeng and quickly ran out without looking back. Looking at the old man's angry face, the corners of Yun Qingya's mouth twitched. She really wanted to remind this old fellow that they had the same surname in the first place. However, reminding the old man at a time like this was asking for trouble. Hence, Yun Qingya tactfully shut her mouth. Chapter 18. The Phoenix Feather Restaurant was the most luxurious restaurant in Longyuan country. According to the rumors in the streets, the owner of this Phoenix Feather Restaurant was a member of the imperial family. Hence, no one had dared to cause trouble in the Phoenix Feather Restaurant all these years. Even those arrogant and despotic members of the aristocratic families would behave themselves when they entered the Phoenix Feather Restaurant. At this moment, in the luxurious private room of the Phoenix Feather Restaurant, Crown Prince Gaoling's face was cold and his entire body was emitting an icy aura. "I say, Your Highness." The man in embroidered robes who was sitting next to him could not take it any longer. He frowned and said, "Didn't you just make a trip to the general's mansion? Why do you look like you want to kill someone? What has the general's mansion done to make you so angry?" Gaoling gulped down a mouthful of wine. His handsome face was filled with anger. "It's all because of that good-for-nothing Yun Luofeng. In order to break off the engagement, I had asked Jinglin to check on her health. But she had refused because she wanted to pester me. I really don't know what that good-for-nothing is thinking. It's impossible for us to be together. Why does she have to pester me?" The crown prince, who had always been gentle in front of others, would only become so irascible when Yun Luofeng was mentioned. Even now, the mere mention of Yun Luofeng's name made him feel an urge to kill. That can't be. The man in embroidered robes stared at Gaoling in shock. Yun Luofeng actually has such ambition. She would disregard her own health for the sake of marrying you? I say, Your Highness, on account of Yun Luofeng's infatuation, please accept her. Gaoling stared coldly at the man in embroidered robes. His eyes were filled with an icy chill. A good-for-nothing like Yun Luofeng, even if she were to become my concubine, she would still be climbing up the social ladder. No matter what, this engagement must be broken off. The man in embroidered robes waved his fan and his eyes were filled with a smile. So that's why you found someone with a similar figure to you to impersonate you, and use this to frame Yun Luofeng's reputation so that you can break off the engagement with him? Gaoling gradually calmed down. He pursed his lips and an obscure light flashed across his eyes. General Yun holds the power of millions of soldiers. If I were to break off the engagement for no reason, it would easily provoke General Yun's anger. When that happens, it would be extremely disadvantageous to the imperial family. Even if Yun Luofeng's reputation is ruined because of your slander? The man in embroidered clothes paused. I heard that because you framed her, that Yun Luofeng committed suicide. Gaoling snorted coldly and said in a heartless voice, Does Yun Luofeng have a good reputation? So what if she was carrying a man who had been robbed on the street? Even if she couldn't stand the slander and committed suicide, it would still be because she didn't follow the ways of a woman and deserved to die. Public opinion would never stand on her side. How could General Yun have the face to avenge her? What a pity. This trash actually didn't die and actually came back to life. Perhaps it was because the man in embroidered robes beside him was extremely trustworthy, so he didn't conceal the viciousness in his heart in front of the man in embroidered robes and fiercely spoke these words. Suddenly, a surprised voice came from the side. The man in embroidered robes looked out of the window and a mocking smile flashed across his eyes. Your Highness, isn't that your good-for-nothing fiancé? Gao Ling was taken aback. He followed the gaze of the man in embroidered robes. At that moment, he saw a young girl dressed in white on the bustling street. His eyes grew even colder. Chapter 19. What's the matter? On the bustling street, Yun Luofeng crossed his arms over his chest, lazily looking at the few people blocking his way. His evil eyes slightly glanced and fell on the handsome young man standing at the forefront. In an instant, information about this young man leaped into his ears. Mu Shan Mu Wushuang's half-brother. The #1 playboy in the imperial city, relying on his aunt being the imperial concubine. He has always been lawless and condescending. Coupled with the personal relationship between Mu Wushuang and the crown prince, he has bullied Yun Luofeng over the years. Oh, I was wondering who it was. Isn't this the waste Yun Luofeng of the Yun clan? Haha. Mu Shan laughed twice, whistling towards Yun Luofeng. His pair of lustful eyes swept up and down Yun Luofeng. What's wrong? His Highness the Crown Prince doesn't want you anymore, so you want to find a man? TSK. I didn't think that someone like General Yun would give birth to such a lowly granddaughter like you. If you really have such a need, this young master will be kind enough to satisfy you. Yun Luofeng gently raised the corner of her lips, looking at the young man standing in front of her with an evil smile. I heard that the young master of the Mu clan, Mu Shan, has some defects in that area. The maids in the Fu are still virgins. I don't know how you can satisfy me with your ability? Mu Shan's face froze. He really has defects in that area, so he hasn't touched any of the maids in the Fu. It's not that he doesn't want to touch them, but he really has no way to touch them. But this matter, even his grandfather doesn't know. How does this waste Yun Luofeng know? Of course Mu Shan doesn't know. With Yun Luofeng's medical skills, she can see at a glance that his body is weak, lacking in sexual intercourse. Therefore, she guessed that the maids in the Fu are still virgins. Moreover, she can clearly see the reason why this #1 playboy in the imperial city is lacking in sexual intercourse. Yun Luofeng, what the hell are you talking about? Mu Shan's face has a kind of anger from being exposed. This young master is very strong in that area. A night with 100 women is not a problem. You fucking dare to frame this young master. This young master will let you taste the feeling of being pressed down by this young master. Second Master Mu. Seeing Mu Shan rushing towards Yun Luofeng, another noble youth hurriedly pulled her back. This Yun Luofeng is the sole heir of the general's household. If we go too far, General Yun will definitely not let us off so easily. Get lost. Mu Shan kicked away the noble youth who was holding him. He looked at Yun Luofeng angrily. This young master's aunt is the current emperor's favorite concubine. Who dares to disobey this young master? Yun Luofeng, you slandered this young master's reputation. This young master will let you testify for this young master's innocence in front of the world. Within the restaurant, the man in embroidered clothes stood before the window and looked down at the scene that had occurred on the street. He clicked his tongue and said, Your Highness, regardless of whether you like Yun Luofeng or not, she is still your fiancée. Are you going to allow her to lose her chastity in public? Gao Ling pursed his lips. His body was like a sharp blade as he glared at the white figure on the street. This has nothing to do with me. After a long pause, Gao Ling retracted his gaze. He paused and added, I have to thank Mu Shan for accepting this piece of trash. If she had really lost her chastity in public, then she would have even less right to be my match. Then, Gao Ling walked out with his hands behind his back. From the beginning to the end, he did not turn back to look at Yun Luofeng, who was in the middle of a dispute. Chapter 20. Mu Shan, your aunt is the emperor's favorite concubine. So what? My grandfather is a general of the dynasty. You want to compete in hedonism with me? Are you sure you have the right? Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows slightly as he watched Mu Shen walk towards him with a face filled with fury. The corners of his mouth were lifted into a demonic and arrogant smile. However, since you want to compete with me in being a profligate son, I will now let you understand what a true profligate son is. Clap, clap, clap. Yun Luofeng raised his hand and clapped 3 times. With a swoosh, countless men dressed in the uniform of the Yun family guards appeared on the once bustling street. Beat him. After speaking, Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows and stood to one side. He stared at the dumbfounded Mu Shen with a demonic smile. Yun Luofeng, you're shameless. Mu Shen became even more enraged. His rage soared to the heavens as he roared loudly. What kind of ability is it to let your Yun family soldiers step forward? If you have the ability, let's fight one-on-one. Yun Luofeng looked at Mu Shen as if he was looking at an idiot. We're competing in hedonism. Since you're a hedonist, why would you care about fairness? Furthermore, I Yun Luofeng am not someone who cares about face. What I love the most is to bully the few with numbers. Mu Shen's eyes widened in shock. He has never heard anyone call him shameless, let alone say it in such a matter-of-fact manner. Mu Shen, don't you like to bully others with your power? Then I'll show you what it means to bully others with your power. Just as he was in a daze, Yun Luofeng's arrogant voice rang out. Taking advantage of the fact that Mu Shen had yet to react, the Yun family's guard swarmed forward and began to beat up the stunned Mu Shen. As for the noble youths who were originally with Mu Shen, they had long since fled when they saw that the situation was not good. Mu Shen howled as he was beaten, and his miserable cries echoed throughout the entire street. Yun Luofeng crossed his arms and narrowed his eyes at the fleeing Mu Shen. The demonic smile on the corners of his lips grew wider and wider, and his eyes were filled with arrogance and confidence. Since she is now Yun Luofeng of the Yun family, she will repay the Yun family bit by bit. And this is just the beginning. Next, she would increase her strength and use her own strength to avenge the parents of this body. The few of you throw him back to the Mu family. Seeing that it was about time, Yun Luofeng waved his hand and stopped the Yun family guards. Also, tell Prime Minister Mu that Mu Shen was rude to me on the street and even wanted to forcefully take me on the street. So, in order to protect me, the Yun family guards could only injure him. However, this Mu Shen's actions have caused great harm to my young heart. Hence, our Yun family will demand compensation from the Mu family. The exact number will be discussed by my grandfather, General Yun, personally. Shameless. How fucking shameless. She was clearly the one who had beaten Mu Shen into a pig's head. But in the end, she was acting like a victim. What did it mean to have a young mind? Her. Young and naive? Yes, eldest Mississippi, because of General Yun's orders. The Yun family guards carried out Yun Luofeng's orders meticulously. They picked up the half-dead Mu Shen and headed towards Prime Minister Mu's residence. At the Prime Minister's residence, when Mu Xingqiu saw Mu Shen being carried in like a dead pig, his beard trembled in anger. Even though he doesn't really like this hedonistic grandson of his, he was still a member of the Mu family. Being beaten to this state was equivalent to slapping his face. Hence, he roared angrily, your general's residence must have eaten a bear's heart and a leopard's gall to dare to lay your hands on my grandson. Immediately get that dog Yun Luo to come here and apologize. Otherwise, I won't let him off. Chapter 21. Prime Minister Mu, your son was rude to our young lady on the street and tried to take advantage of her in front of everyone. We have been ordered by the general to protect the young lady, and will not allow anyone to hurt her. However, how could our young lady have ever seen such a scene? Her heart has already been greatly hurt. Hence, we have informed the Prime Minister that our general will be here to discuss the matter of compensation. Mu Xingqiu was so angry that he nearly spat out a mouthful of blood. He staggered a few steps before he managed to keep himself from collapsing. Trembling, he raised his hand and pointed at the Yun family guard, who was as cold as a mountain. Trembling, he said, just you wait, I will not let this matter rest. Can these people be any more shameless? My own grandson has been beaten to such a state, yet they still want me to compensate? Furthermore, he did not believe that Yun Luofeng would be scared silly. That woman's courage was greater than the heavens. How could anything possibly frighten her? We have conveyed the message. We will now return to report. It won't be long before the general will personally pay a visit and seek justice for the young lady." The guard's words were so righteous that Mu Xingqiu almost fainted. He gritted his teeth and fiercely said, "Fine. I will report this matter to His Majesty now. His Majesty will decide who is right and who is wrong." Humph. After saying this, he flung his sleeves and left with his hands behind his back. He now needed to change into his court attire and meet His Majesty. Just as the guards escorted Mu Shan back to the Prime Minister's residence, another person rushed back to the Yun family to report this matter. When Yun Luofeng heard his subordinate's report, he was stunned for a moment before he let out a hearty laugh. "Ha ha ha. Good. Very good. This is my granddaughter. My granddaughter should be this courageous and fearless." However, knowing Mu Xingqiu's character, he will not let this matter rest so easily. "Men, help me prepare. I want to enter the court to meet His Majesty." In the Roaring Dragon continent, it was famous for its medicine. It was said that the most famous power was the medical pavilion. Not only did this medical pavilion sell all kinds of medicinal herbs, but it also had extremely powerful doctors. However, these doctors would not usually save people. Even if one were to throw out a lot of money, one might not be able to invite them. Yun Luofeng stepped into the medical pavilion without any hesitation. Fortunately, the people who came to the medical pavilion were not ordinary people. Hence, the passing customers were busy solving their own problems, and no one noticed her appearance. Mississippi, just as Yun Luofeng was looking around the famous medical pavilion, a man wearing a green robe walked up to her side and politely said, "May I ask if you've come to our medical pavilion to buy medicinal ingredients?" Yun Luofeng nodded slightly and took out the piece of paper he carried with him. "I want the medicinal ingredients on this. Help me bring them over." The azure-robed man still had that appropriate smile on his face. He took the paper from Yun Luofeng and said with a smile, "Okay, please wait a moment. I will bring the ingredients to you in a moment." After saying this, the green-robed man left to pick out medicinal ingredients for Yun Luofeng. Using this time, Yun Luofeng looked around the medical pavilion again. Because there were many doctors who came to the medical pavilion, there were some problems that the doctors could not solve posted on the walls of the medical pavilion. They wanted to use the medical pavilion to discuss with others. Chapter 22. Yun Luofeng looked all the way. Those people were asking questions that were not challenging at all. She couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Just as she was about to turn around and leave, she suddenly caught a glimpse of a question that made her stop in her tracks. "Excuse me, if you are accidentally poisoned by datura poison, how do you treat it?" Datura poison came from a plant called datura flower. It was extremely toxic, and those who were poisoned would gradually age until they died. In today's Longshao continent, it was indeed difficult to solve the problem of datura poison. However, before she came to buy medicinal herbs, she casually flipped through the medical encyclopedia and happened to turn to the page about datura poison. Perhaps it was a spur of the moment. Yun Luofeng wrote down the method of detoxification under this question, then put down the pen in her hand and walked towards the center of the hall. From beginning to end, no one saw the few strokes that the girl in white left on the paper. "Miss, I have prepared the medicinal herbs you wanted." Just as Yun Luofeng walked to the center of the hall, the man in green robe had already walked in front of her with the medicinal herbs. His face was still smiling politely. "A total of 5 million silver taels." 5 million silver taels? So expensive? Yun Luofeng's nerves twitched. For the first time, she realized that the general's mansion was so poor. Moreover, these medicinal herbs were only enough for her to soak in for one day. If she continued for 5 days, she was afraid that the general's treasury would not be enough for her to squander. It seemed that it was time for her to earn some money. It turns out that the dignified miss of the general's mansion is also short of money. Suddenly, a sarcastic voice came from the entrance of the medical pavilion. Everyone looked towards the direction of the voice. The first thing that caught their eyes was Mu Wushuang, dressed in a light yellow velvet skirt. Noble and elegant, her whole body had an indescribable charm, forming a sharp contrast with the people around her. She was like a flower standing in a pile of cow dung, beautiful and charming, with a fragrant aroma. The one who ridiculed Yun Luofeng was her little follower, Wu Qi. After all, in the face of people like Yun Luofeng, Mu Wushuang had always disdained to speak with her arrogant mouth. Moreover, from the moment she entered the door until now, she did not even look at Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng touched her nose. Seeing that Mu Wushuang appeared here, it seemed that he did not know that she had beaten Mu Shan. Shopkeeper Lin. Mu Wushuang bypassed Yun Luofeng and walked towards the man in the green robe standing in front of her. His previous cold and elegant appearance was replaced with a smile on his beautiful face. Is Elder Rong here today? If he's here, could I trouble Shopkeeper Lin to inform him that Wushuang is here to pay a visit? This was the medical pavilion. Even if the person in front of her was only a small shopkeeper, Mu Wushuang, as the daughter of the Prime Minister's mansion, had to be polite and not dare to overstep her boundaries. Shopkeeper Lin frowned, but he still maintained a polite smile on his face. I'm sorry, Elder Rong has gone on a long journey and hasn't returned yet. Please return, Miss Wushuang. The smile on Mu Wushuang's face stiffened. It was because she got the news that Elder Rong had returned that she came to see him. She didn't expect these people to not give her face. Even though he thought so, the smile on Mu Wushuang's face did not change. In that case, Wushuang took the liberty to disturb you again this time. If Elder Rong comes back, please inform me. Wushuang will visit you with gifts. Please. The man in the green robe made a gesture of invitation, indicating for Mu Wushuang to leave. Mu Wushuang's stomach was choking with anger, but she had to maintain a noble and elegant smile. So when no one was looking, she winked at her little attendant Wu Qi. Wu Qi immediately understood. Looking at Yun Luofeng who had not left, he mockingly said, Yun Luofeng, what are you still doing here? Since you can't come up with the money to buy herbs, get out of here immediately. The place where our Miss Wushuang appears must maintain fresh air. But such good air has been polluted by a waste like you. Mu Wushuang needed to maintain her image outside, so naturally she couldn't embarrass Yun Luofeng. Therefore, this kind of thing was usually done by her little attendant, who told her to have a belly full of anger and nowhere to vent, but this waste still appeared in such a place. Chapter 23. Miss Yun, put your bill on my tab. Just as Wu Qi was about to make things difficult for Yun Luofeng, a voice as gentle as jade rang out from behind her. Wu Qi's originally arrogant face immediately stiffened when he saw the man walking towards him. His expression was as ugly as if he had just eaten feces, but he did not dare to say a word. The man was dressed in brocade and was incomparably noble. The aura that emanated from his body was not something that a person like Wu Qi could compare to. His face was filled with a gentle smile and his eyes were filled with a gentle luster. Incomparably handsome, gentle like jade. Suddenly, these words leapt into Yun Luofeng's mind. Yun Luofeng could not help but take another look at the man. But, even though the man's face was filled with a smile, that smile did not reach the depths of his eyes. His gentle eyes concealed a cunning and sinister fox. Fourth Prince, Mu Wushuang's beautiful face maintained a decent smile, as if the person who instigated Wu Qi to make things difficult for Yun Luofeng wasn't her. So, you also came to visit Elder Rong? Gao Shaochen smiled and unfolded the folding fan in his hand. His eyes had changed from their initial gentleness to a somewhat cold look. I'm not here to visit Elder Rong, I'm only here to buy a few medicinal herbs. I didn't expect to see you making things difficult for the Yun family's Yun Luofeng. Shopkeeper Lin, put Yun Luofeng's bill on my tab. Even if the general's household is poor, we can still afford this 5 million taels. Yun Luofeng glanced at Gao Shaochen before turning his gaze towards the green-robed man. I'll take the medicinal herbs with me first. Later, you can go to the general's household to get the money. However, your price is indeed too expensive. How about you give that herb to me? The young girl's eyes flashed twice as she pointed towards a green herb that had been thrown into a corner and spoke with a smile. The green-robed man was stunned for a moment before he smiled politely. Miss Yun, this is only a common medicinal herb. It doesn't have any use. If Miss Yun likes it, you can take all the herbs in that corner. Thank you. Yun Luofeng did not stand on ceremony. He collected all the medicinal herbs and walked out the door without looking back. Gao Shaochen looked at the disappearing silhouette of the young girl and suddenly laughed. I didn't think that the Yun family's Yun Luofeng wasn't as bad as the rumors say. Perhaps my brother will lose a treasure. Mu Wushuang, who was standing beside Gao Shaochen, felt very uncomfortable after hearing this. What do you mean the crown prince will lose a treasure? She was the only woman worthy of the crown prince. Yun Luofeng, that kind of trash, didn't even have the qualifications to be the crown prince's concubine. Let's go. Mu Wushuang's good upbringing did not make Mu Wushuang explode on the spot. She looked at Gao Xiaochen and then left the medical pavilion with a group of followers, disappearing under the bright afternoon sun. Your Royal Highness, may I know what medicinal ingredients you're here to purchase? The green-robed man smiled and politely asked as he watched them leave. A cunning light flashed in Gao Xiaochen's eyes. Just now, what medicinal ingredients did Yun Luofeng buy? Give me a portion of all of them. Please wait a moment, I'll go prepare it. The green-robed man was in a very good mood. After all, he hadn't sold such expensive medicinal herbs in a single day for many days. Therefore, at this moment, the smile on his face was no longer polite, but a smile from the bottom of his heart. Chapter 24. However, just as the green-robed man reached the wall filled with questions, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. His eyes widened as he reached out with a trembling hand towards one of the papers. Someone actually answered the question about the datura poison? No, I have to hurry and find Elder Rong. Only Elder Rong will know if the answer is true or false. At this moment, the green-robed man could not be bothered with Gao Xiaochen, who was still waiting for him. He hurriedly ran towards the inner hall of the medical pavilion. In the inner hall, Elder Rong, who had been claimed by shopkeeper Lin to be out of the medical pavilion, was slowly sipping his tea. His elderly face was filled with worry and worry. A middle-aged man stood in front of him. In contrast to the old man's anxiety, the middle-aged man's expression was one of utmost respect. Has no one answered the question about the datura flower's antidote? Elder Rong put down the teacup in his hand and sighed softly. Elder Rong. The middle-aged man paused for a moment before replying. Even the strongest doctors in the medical pavilion have no idea how to cure the datura flower. I'm afraid that no one else knows how to cure the datura flower. Elder Rong laughed bitterly. I only wanted to give it a try. If no one is able to answer the question, then I won't blame you. I've overestimated the doctors in Long Yuan country. As he spoke, the sound of hurried footsteps could be heard from outside the door. The door was then pushed open abruptly. The middle-aged man furrowed his brows and stared coldly at the green-robed man who had just pushed the door open. Lin Xiao, I'm in the middle of a discussion with Elder Rong. Who asked you to disturb us? Hurry up and leave. Lin Xiao's body trembled and he hurriedly knelt on the ground. Reporting to Lord Murong, I saw that someone had answered the question about the datura flower's antidote. That's why I rushed here to report this matter. Please forgive me, my lord. Whoosh! This time, without waiting for the middle-aged man to speak, Elder Rong, who had been sipping his tea, suddenly stood up. His breathing quickened. What did you just say? Someone has really answered the question about the datura flower's antidote? Quick! Give me that piece of paper. Yes, Elder Rong. Lin Xiao respectfully handed the piece of paper to Elder Rong. His heart was filled with excitement as he followed Elder Rong's actions. Elder Rong held his breath, his hand trembling as he held the paper. That's right. This is the antidote to the mandala flower. The method we came up with before is only one step away from what she wrote. No wonder we all failed. Turns out that we were just one step away. No, I have to meet this mysterious person. Lin Xiao, go find the doctor who answered this question at once. She is of utmost importance to our medical pavilion. Understood. Lin Xiao once again cupped his fists and stood up. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly remembered something and asked, That's right, Elder Rong, Prime Minister Mu's residence's Mu Wushuan is here to see you again. I wonder if Elder Rong... Before Lin Xiao could say anything, Elder Rong interrupted him impatiently with a frown. Is she the one who answered the question? If not, tell her to scram. Yes. The corner of Lin Xiao's mouth twitched, but he still replied respectfully. He understood that there was nothing more important to Elder Rong than the method to detoxify the mandara flower. Yun Luofeng had never thought that the few strokes she had left on a whim would cause such a huge sensation in the medical pavilion. It had even caused the entire medical pavilion to move out in search of her. If she had known that this would happen, she would never have left those few strokes. Chapter 25. Master, someone's following us. On the street, Yun Luofeng was walking in the direction of the general's mansion. However, at this moment, a soft and wriggling voice rang out from her soul and directly into her mind. It's someone from that woman called Mu Wuxuan's side. Little Mo explained once again. Yun Luofeng gently furrowed her brows and her nimble body quickly flashed into an alley on the side. Then she saw a few figures quickly flash past the street where she had just been standing. As they walked, they seemed to be searching for something in the crowd. Looks like I need to increase my strength as soon as possible. Yun Luofeng gently raised her brows and a look of determination flashed across her eyes. On this mainland, only one's fist was the real truth. If one's fist was hard, even the emperor would have to listen to your orders. Alright, they've left. I should go back too. When she saw those figures completely disappear from the street, Yun Luofeng dusted her hands and walked forward. Just as she was about to walk out of the alley, a black figure suddenly flipped over the wall. Caught off guard, it smashed towards Yun Luofeng with a loud thud. Coincidentally, when the black figure landed, his face was facing Yun Luofeng. Then, as expected, his lips pressed against the young girl's lips at the same time. His body pressed the young girl to the ground. The two of them were pressed tightly together. No matter how one looked at this position, it was easy for one's imagination to run wild. Yun Luofeng narrowed her eyes slightly and a dangerous light flashed across them. Get lost. The man did not move and continued to press the young girl to the ground. At this moment, the young girl could even feel his weak breathing. Bang! The light in Yun Luofeng's eyes became even more threatening when she saw the man press down on her without moving. She raised her hand and forcefully pushed the man away. The man's head could not help but hit the wall with a dull thud. At the same time, the mask on the man's face fell. Even Yun Luofeng, who had seen countless handsome men, could not help but be shocked when she saw the man's face. He was not as handsome and cold as Gao Ling, nor was he as beautiful as Yun Qingya, nor was he as gentle as Gao Shaochen. However, it was undeniable that if this man's appearance was taken out, it would cause more screams than anyone else. His eyebrows were as sharp as swords, his handsome face, and his perfect facial features looked as if they had been carved. Especially that figure, the open black robe revealed the 8-pack abs. Any woman would involuntarily drool at the sight of it. His lips were slightly red and looked very soft. At this moment, he was gently pursing them with a pained expression. Master, his body is a spiritual entity. Little Mo, who was in the divine grimoire, was excited. He had completely forgotten that his master had just been molested by this guy. Quick, pick him up. He's very useful to you. Spirit body. Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows, looked at the unconscious man and asked, What kind of body is this? Master, didn't I tell you that your physique is spirit empty body, so your body is very weak, and it causes you to bleed whenever you cultivate. Only by using my special cultivation technique can I cultivate it. This spiritual entity has the same effect as your variant body. However, his physique belongs to the type that cannot cultivate before the age of 10, but after the age of 10, his cultivation speed will increase. Generally speaking, martial artists in the Roaring Dragon continent would start cultivating from a young age, but this spiritual entity was different. Martial artists with a spiritual entity would not be able to cultivate before the age of 10 no matter what. Once they passed the age of 10, their cultivation speed would increase. Chapter 26. Of course, Master. The reason I want you to pick him up is because with this guy by your side, your cultivation speed will be very fast. Also, if the two of you can dual cultivate, it will speed up your advancement. Master, quickly pick him up and dual cultivate with him. Dual cultivation? Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a smile. She was speechless. Who would have thought that on this mainland, there was such a thing as dual cultivation? Master, quickly bring him back. He's injured and fainted. After you bring him back, tie him up and let him perform dual cultivation for you every night. I guarantee that your cultivation speed will increase very quickly. Yun Luofeng was even more speechless. Why did she feel that little Mo was even more excited than she was after seeing this man? Could it be that little Mo was interested in this fellow? Forget it. Yun Luofeng shook her head. I'm not interested in kidnapping people. It's getting late, I should go back. That's right, from Yun Luofeng's point of view. What was the difference between Little Mo's actions and kidnapping? However, before leaving, Yun Luofeng took out the silver needles she had bought along the way and used them to treat the man's injuries. She then took out the medicinal herbs that the medical pavilion had given her and fed them to him. After doing all this, she turned around and walked out of the alley. All right, I'm helping him slow down his injuries because he's a spiritual entity. Whether he can survive or not will depend on his own luck. I don't want to go through the trouble of buying medicinal herbs for treatment. No, Master, you have to bring him back. Don't go, Master. In her soul, Little Mo's anxious cries could be heard. In order to stop this fellow from making a ruckus, Yun Luofeng cut off the connection between the two of them. Finally, there was silence in her ears. In the majestic and solemn main hall of the imperial palace, a man dressed in a bright yellow dragon robe sat high up on the dragon throne. He looked at General Yun, who was kneeling on the ground and crying bitterly. He rubbed his forehead, feeling a headache coming on. Your Majesty, you must help me in this matter. For the sake of the safety of Long Yuan country, I've been stationed at the borders for over 10 years. In these 10 years my granddaughter Yun Luofeng was left alone at home. She suffered many grievances and humiliation. Not long ago she was framed and almost committed suicide. Let's just forget about it. This old subject isn't someone who would fuss over minor matters. However, that Mu Shan from the Mu family actually wanted to forcefully take my granddaughter in the middle of the street. General Yun had a pained expression, as if something had really happened to Yun Luofeng. If it weren't for the loyalty of my Yun family's guards, who risked defending the Mu family to save my granddaughter would have already become the claws of that beast. I beg your Majesty to uphold justice for this old minister. Mu Xingqiu had just entered the main hall. Before he could voice out his grievances, he heard General Yun's shameless words. He nearly spat out a mouthful of blood. General Yun, you're slandering me. Not only did your Yun family members injure my grandson, they even tried to blackmail me. Now you actually dare to accuse me first. Your Majesty, you have to uphold justice for this subject. This General Yun is relying on the millions of soldiers of the Yun family to commit all sorts of crimes. He even dared to beat up my grandson. Your Majesty, you have to punish such lawless behavior. Yun Luofeng rolled his eyes at him and snorted. My Yun family was acting in self-defense. If Mu Shun hadn't stretched out his claws towards my granddaughter, would he have been beaten up? The Prime Minister's residence was in the wrong first. If you don't give me an explanation, I will not let this matter rest. Chapter 27. In the main hall, all the officials lowered their heads and did not dare to make a sound. They were afraid that the war between the two mountains of Long Yuan country would drag them into it. Mu Xingqiu's expression was extremely ugly, as if he had just eaten feces. He glared fiercely at Yun Luo's shameless face. If it had not been for the fact that he could not defeat this old man, he would have punched him in the face. Yun Luo, are you shameless? Is your entire family so shameless? Your granddaughter Yun Luofeng is still standing there unscathed. On the contrary, my grandson is still unconscious. I believe that your Majesty will be able to decide who is right and who is wrong. Yun Luo sneered and stood up from the ground. His gaze was domineering and sharp, like a sharp long sword. Even though my granddaughter is safe and sound right now, it's all thanks to the protection of my Yun family's guards. Otherwise, I'm afraid I would have lost my only family member. However, even though my granddaughter escaped, she was still frightened. If you do not give me an explanation today, I will have my Yun family soldiers trample over your residence. Mu Xingqiu was so angry that his entire body trembled. He took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. He no longer looked at the old man and turned his gaze to Gao Tuesday. Your Majesty, please decide who is right and who is wrong. His daughter was the emperor's favorite concubine, and his granddaughter Mu Wushuang was in love with the crown prince. If not for Yun Luofeng, Mu Wushuang would have become the crown prince's concubine. However, it was only a matter of time before she became the crown prince's concubine. How could a good-for-nothing like Yun Luofeng be worthy of the title of mother of the nation? This. Gao Tu furrowed his brows tightly. He looked at the two officials who were blaming each other. In the end, he still sighed softly. Prime Minister, Mu clan was indeed in the wrong in this matter. The Yun clan was also acting in self-defense. Let Mu Xin go to the Yun clan and apologize. It was not that Gao Tu did not want to side with Prime Minister Mu, but Yun Luofeng had left home for Long Yuan country for 10 years. If he continued to side with Prime Minister Mu, it would definitely disappoint the people. Furthermore, regardless of whether it was Yun Luofeng's parents or the Yun family's genius, Yun Qingya, it was all because of his favoritism towards Mu clan. And this Yun Luofeng was already the sole heir of the Yun family. If something were to really go wrong, this old fellow would probably go crazy on the spot. Your Majesty. All right. Gao Tu waved his hand when he saw that Mu Xingqiu was about to speak. He then turned towards Yun Luo and spoke in a dignified manner. This matter ends here. Mu Shan has received his retribution for teasing Yun Luofeng. As for the matter of compensation, forget it. After all, Yun Luofeng has not suffered any harm. We do not wish for anyone to mention this matter again. Mu Shan had clearly wanted to rape Yun Luofeng, but in Gao Tu's mouth it had become molestation. The difference between the two times was completely different. Yun Luo lowered his eyes to hide the disappointment in them. He said indifferently, "Since your Majesty has given the order, I will obey. It's just that I'm getting on in years and won't be able to lead troops to war in the future. This commander's seal will be returned to your Majesty." After saying this, he took out a commander's seal from his sleeve, took 2 steps forward, and handed it to the eunuch beside him. The eunuch took the commander's seal and walked to Gao Tu's side, respectfully presenting it in front of him. Gao Tu had been worrying about how to take back the authority of the 1 million troops. He did not expect that this old fellow would voluntarily hand it over. A wave of ecstasy surged from the bottom of his heart. Chapter 28. However, his face revealed a hint of awkwardness. "General Yun, you are the pillar of the country. I'm afraid it's not good for you to do this. You should take the commander's seal back. Long Yuan country cannot live without you." Old fox. Yun Luo cursed in his heart. Don't think that I don't know, this old fox is already very happy in his heart. Your Majesty, I just want to accompany my granddaughter and spend the rest of my life in the palace. I don't want to work too hard. All right. Gao Tu was in a difficult position. I can take the commander's seal back, but as of now, there is no suitable candidate for the position of general, so the position of general will still be held by General Yun. All he wanted was the commander's seal. As for the position of general, it wasn't that important. So what if he was given this position? Otherwise, the people would think that he was unreasonable. Thank you, Your Majesty. Yun Luo laughed coldly in his heart. I still have 2 things to do. One is to break off the engagement between my granddaughter Yun Luofeng and the Crown Prince Gao Ling. Gao Tu froze, frowning. General Yun, are you sure you want to break off the engagement? You have to know that Yun Luofeng is unable to cultivate and is a waste. If she breaks off the engagement with the Crown Prince, she will never be able to marry again. In other words, if the engagement was broken off, no one would be willing to marry a waste like Yun Luofeng. Feng Er is my granddaughter. As long as I am alive, no one will dare to look down on her. Furthermore, the Crown Prince already has someone else in his heart. Feng Er will only suffer if she stays with him. General Yun, I hope that you will reconsider this matter. Gao Tu's face darkened. With Yun Luofeng's strength, it is indeed impossible for her to become the Crown Prince's wife. However, if she insists on being with the Crown Prince, I will make the decision for her and allow her to become the Crown Prince's concubine. As the Crown Prince's concubine, she must have both looks and talent. He had already promised the Prime Minister that he would let Mu Wushuang become the Crown Prince's concubine. As for the engagement from 10 years ago, wasn't Yun Luofeng just born then? He didn't know that she would be a waste, plus the Yun family's children were all outstanding, so he decided to marry her. Since he could see that she was a waste, there was no need to fulfill the engagement. But this General Yun's ability was outstanding, and he still hoped to be connected by marriage with the general's residence. Even if she handed over her military power, her own ability was still there. It's just the position of a concubine, not an imperial concubine. It's not a big deal to give it to a waste. The daughters of my Yun family will never become anyone's concubine. These words were extremely domineering. The daughters of the Yun family would never become someone's concubine, not even if the other party was a member of the royal family. Humph. Mu Xingqiu, who had been suppressing a bellyful of anger, suddenly sneered and said mockingly, just based on that useless granddaughter of yours, giving her the position of the crown prince's concubine is already giving her face. Could it be that she wants to be the princess consort? You're simply indulging in fantasy. Ask all the ministers here. Who would be willing to let their descendants marry your granddaughter? The ministers didn't expect that Mu Xingqiu would bring the topic to them. They couldn't help but lower their heads even more. They were deeply afraid that Yun Luo would forcefully shove that good-for-nothing of his to their descendants in a fit of anger. Although that wastrel was extremely beautiful, she was just a good-looking wastrel who could not cultivate. She was only qualified to be someone's concubine. Anyone with a bit of status would not be able to win her as a wife. Chapter 29. Yun Luo's gaze turned cold bit by bit. His sharp gaze swept across the ministers who had their heads lowered and were staring at the tips of their toes. His gaze was like a knife, making them feel as if there was a sharp edge on their backs. Your Imperial Majesty, my granddaughter is in charge of the annulment of the engagement. If your Imperial Majesty sympathizes with the ministers, please grant this old minister's request. He turned around and looked at Gao Tu, who was high up in the air, as he spoke firmly. Very well. Gao Tu's gaze was like a torch as he replied in a dignified manner. Since General Yun has a request, we shall grant it. However, General Yun, don't regret it in the future. I will never regret it. Yun Luo's gaze became even more determined. I have one last request. I hope that your Imperial Majesty will allow me to use the blank Imperial Edict that your Imperial Majesty has promised to ask for an edict for my granddaughter. The edict is that my granddaughter does not need to kneel in front of any members of the imperial family in the future. Yun Luo had not mentioned the death exemption medallion at all. If he had offended the emperor could have sent the most powerful cultivator in the imperial family to assassinate him. Hence, it did not matter whether he had the death exemption medallion or not. Granted. Gao Tu waved his hand and replied calmly. So what if he doesn't allow it? This old man has already brought out the blank imperial edict. What else can I say? After all, he was the one who had promised the blank imperial edict. If there's nothing else, all of you may leave. This humble minister shall take his leave. As Gao Tu stood up tiredly, the ministers joined their fists and walked out of the hall in twos and threes. Mu Xingqiu walked to Yun Luo's side. A sneer hung on his elderly face as he spoke in a mocking tone. Yun Luo, because of your decision today, your granddaughter is destined to never find a husband. However, there is one type of person who might accept your granddaughter, and that is a beggar. Ha ha ha. Mu Xingqiu laughed maniacally as he spoke. Even if that little good-for-nothing Yun Luofeng uses up his entire life, he would not be able to match up to even 1/10,000th of my granddaughter, Mu Wushuang. Furthermore, let me teach you something. It doesn't matter how talented the members of the Yun family are. It's better to nurture an outstanding daughter. Yun Qingyao was the #1 genius back then, and Yun Luofeng's father was also quite talented. However, in the end they were both defeated by the Mu family. Do you know why? Yun Luo's complexion turned even more ashen. He clenched his fists so hard that cracking sounds could be heard. His gaze, which was as sharp as a knife, shot towards Mu Xingqiu. Mu Xingqiu was not afraid of him at all. He sneered and continued, "That's because my Mu clan has cultivated Mu Qin. In the harem, no other woman is more favored than imperial concubine Qin. Even after the crown prince's mother passed away, she was raised by imperial concubine Qin. Now my Mu Jia has cultivated a peerless woman, Mu Wushuang. She would be the future mother of the nation. As for your Yun family, you first gave birth to 2 short-lived sons, and after much difficulty, you finally got a granddaughter, but she's still trash. So." He paused, the corners of his lips curling up in a mocking smile. "Before long, the Yun family will become a thing of the past. Moreover, after you die, Yun Luofeng will be tortured by all of us. His life will be worse than death." Yun Luo took a deep breath as his fist trembled gently. Clearly, he had used a great deal of strength to suppress the urge to kill in his heart. "Don't worry, I can still live for another 50 to 60 years. If you want to bully my Fenger, don't even think about it." Ha ha ha. Mu Xingqiu laughed heartily. "You can continue to hypnotize yourself here. However, no matter how much you deny it, it won't change the final outcome. My Mu clan will forever be incomparably glorious, and you will soon become history. After saying this, Mu Xingqiu no longer looked at Yun Luo's ashen face. He laughed heartily as he walked out of the hall. Chapter 30. The Yun family home. In a young girl's boudoir, a medicinal fragrance filled the entire room and covered up the original fragrance of the bedroom. Yun Luofeng stood naked in front of the bathtub. She slowly raised her leg and carefully extended it towards the wooden tub. When the tip of her foot came into contact with the medicinal liquid in the tub, a piercing pain spread from the tip of her foot. She hardened her heart and placed her entire leg in the tub. At that moment, the piercing pain made her want to chop her entire leg off. However, she understood that if she could not endure this ordeal, she would forever be a good-for-nothing who would never be able to cultivate. Xiaoemo, you've told me that the medicinal bath would be very painful, but I never thought that it would be this painful. Yun Luofeng laughed bitterly, but in the end, she buried her entire body in the tub. At this moment, she felt as if countless knives were cutting into her skin. It was so painful that she wanted to crawl out several times. However, when she thought of the consequences of failure, she gritted her teeth and endured it. Master, keep it up. As long as you persevere, from now on, this mainland will be yours to roam. Unsurprisingly, Xiaomo's encouragement caused Yun Luofeng's heart to tremble. A determined look flashed across her pale face and her demonic eyes shone with an incomparable determination. You're right, I must persevere. For myself and for the Yun family. She lowered her eyelids, concealing the arrogant, domineering look in her eyes. I want to become powerful. I want no one on this mainland to bully me. I want Mu Xingqiu and that dog of an emperor to kneel in front of my parents' graves and apologize. I also want to trample the entire mainland beneath my feet. She had never been one to be content with mediocrity, not in her past life and not in this life either. In her past life, she had worked hard to study in order to repay her benefactor's kindness in adopting her. In this life, it was all for the sake of surviving on this mainland. Under this intense pain, Yun Luofeng fainted a few times. In the end, her entire body became numb. However, in the end, she managed to persevere. She only climbed out of the tub when the originally green medicinal liquid in it gradually turned black. 2 hours. An entire 2 hours felt as long as a century. It was extremely unbearable. And she still had to endure such intense pain for a total of 4 times. However, because of this first time, she suddenly felt that this kind of pain was not unbearable. Clearly, Yun Luofeng was indulging in the wildest fantasies. The first time he took the medicinal bath, the pain was the lightest. The further he went, the more difficult it became. On the 5th day, Yun Luofeng suddenly discovered the most serious problem. That was, the general's estate was out of money. That's right, her 4 medicinal baths cost a total of 20 million taels of silver. It was the entire savings of the general's residence over the years, but she spent it all in 4 days. Yun Luofeng was dumbfounded. She could imagine her grandfather's furious expression when he saw the empty treasury. Young Mississippi, right at this moment, servant girl Qing Yan hurriedly ran over. Her small face was filled with anxiety. Young Miss, something terrible has happened. Mu Shun from Prime Minister Mu's residence has come to say that he wishes to see young Mississippi. Now that the general is not at home, what should we do? Mu Shun? Hearing this name, Yun Luofeng gently raised the corners of her lips. I was just worrying about not having enough money to buy the medicinal herbs needed for the medicinal bath on the 5th day. Now someone has come to deliver the money. At this moment in the front courtyard, Mu Shun was anxiously pacing back and forth. His face was filled with apprehension. He had been thinking about this for 4 whole days. In these 4 days he had thought about many problems. Those problems all revolved around one person, Yun Luofeng. Chapter 31. He was certain that even his grandfather didn't know that he was impotent. How did Yun Luofeng know this? Therefore, after thinking for a few days, he finally decided to come here to ask about one thing. From afar, he could see a young girl dressed in white walking towards him. The faint rays of light sprinkled down and fell on her peerlessly beautiful face. She was like a character that had walked out of a painting, so beautiful that it could not be replicated. Mu Shun's eyes were filled with amazement. Before this, why didn't he realize that Yun Luofeng was so beautiful? That's right, it should be her temperament. That's right, the young girl's temperament had completely changed. She was no longer as dispirited and infatuated as she was in the beginning. Instead, she had become more and more confident. Even between her brows, there was a hint of arrogance. Her eyes seemed to look down on the world. Suddenly, Mu Shen had a feeling that even his own sister Mu Wushuang couldn't compare to this young girl dressed in white. His Royal Highness wanted to break off the engagement with her. One day, he would regret it for the rest of his life. Yun Luofeng. Mu Shen's mood was complicated. He looked at the young girl coming towards him, gritted his teeth and said, "How did you know? How did you know that I have a problem in that area?" His face turned red and he was a little embarrassed. After all, admitting that he couldn't do it was an extremely shameful thing for a man. The young girl was as lazy and unruly as ever. Her charming eyes faintly glanced at Mu Shan and lightly curled up the corner of her lips. "You've come here, don't you already have an answer?" Plop. Suddenly, Mu Shan knelt in front of Yun Luofeng. With snot and tears on his face, he pleaded, "Godly doctor, please save me. Didn't you say that I'm a waste?" Yun Luofeng frivolously looked at Mu Shan, who was kneeling in front of him. "Godly doctor, I know that I was wrong. I had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. I actually offended the godly doctor. As long as you cure me, I, Mu Shen, will follow your every command." Mu Shen wiped away his tears and said while crying bitterly, "There's no need to follow my every command. However, you also know that I need money to treat patients. Nowadays, medicinal herbs are so expensive. My general's mansion has always been poor and can't afford to buy those herbs." Yun Luofeng shook his head and sighed. "So, it's not that I don't want to save you, it's that I'm powerless. Godly doctor, money can be discussed. As long as you can cure me, any amount of money is not a problem." Hearing Yun Luofeng's words, Mu Shan's eyes lit up. "Seeing that you are so sincere, then I won't charge you any fees. You just have to pay the cost price." Yun Luofeng's lips curved in an evil smile. "Tomorrow bring 50 million and I will immediately treat your illness. As for today, you have to pay 5 million as a deposit." "What?" Mu Shen was dumbstruck. 50 million taels? Or cost price? What kind of medicinal herb was it that the cost was so expensive? "AI, you have to know your illness is not a normal illness. The price of 50 million is already the lowest price, and this is only the price of the medicinal ingredients. As for the silver needles and my labor fees, I didn't even take them." Yun Luofeng glanced at Mu Shan. "If it wasn't for the fact that I have an affinity with you, even if you gave me 100 million, I wouldn't treat you. After all, treating your illness is too tiring. It will also use up my energy." Mu Shan's eyes were filled with emotion. So Yun Luofeng's treatment of him was such a tiring matter. But he still didn't know what was good for him and thought that 50 million was too expensive. Chapter 32. From the looks of it now, 50 million taels wasn't expensive at all. Didn't you see what she had just said? She was treating him because he was fated with her. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't treat him even if they had 100 million taels. Xiao Mo, who was in the temple, couldn't help but roll his eyes when he heard his master's shameless words. Lie as much as you want. This kind of minor illness wasn't a problem for Yun Luofeng at all. In the end, not only did she swindle 50 million taels, she even made the other party feel like he owed her a favor. "Godly doctor," Mu Shen frowned with some difficulty, "I can send the 5 million taels to you later. However, can you give me some time for the remaining 45 million? Yun Luofeng gently touched his chin. "You can start the treatment when you have the money. Also, you mustn't tell anyone that I'm treating you. I'm afraid of trouble. If someone else finds out, don't come looking for me if you have any other difficult illnesses in the future. I won't treat ordinary people." Mu Shan's heart shook and a burst of joy surged from the bottom of his heart. She said that she wouldn't treat ordinary people. In other words, he wasn't an ordinary person. Knowing such a godly doctor, his life would at least be guaranteed in the future. "Godly doctor, I understand now. No wonder people call you trash all these years." "Oh no, godly doctor, I'm not saying you're trash. They're the ones who said it. I've always felt that you're a hidden genius." Mu Shan's face was full of flattery. "You're afraid of trouble and don't want to treat people casually, so you hid your medical skills, right? Don't worry, I won't tell anyone about your medical skills. Even if Yun Luofeng hadn't warned him, he wouldn't have spoken about it. Otherwise, the fact that he was inhumane would have spread. All right, you can go. Send the 5 million taels of deposit within 2 hours. If you exceed the time limit, you don't need to come. Shua. Just as Yun Luofeng finished speaking, Mu Shun disappeared without a trace. He was deeply afraid that if he delayed the delivery of the money, Yun Luofeng would really refuse to treat him out of anger. It turns out that it's so easy for a doctor to earn money. Yun Luofeng gently stroked his chin. The smile on his beautiful face became even more demonic. It's quite easy. It's not even 10,000 taels of silver, but you've cheated someone of 50 million taels of silver. More importantly, you've cheated someone of 50 million taels of silver, and they're still grateful to you. Don't you think this Mu Shun is stupid? Little Mo was speechless. He didn't expect his master to be such a big liar. He's a member of the Mu clan. If I don't trick him, who should I trick? Yun Luofeng lowered his eyebrows and smiled faintly. All right, the last day of the medicinal bath is almost in my hands. From tomorrow onwards, I can officially step onto the path of cultivation. At that time, I will make those who have harmed the Yun family pay a bloody lesson. A debt of blood should be paid with blood. Even though Yun Luofeng's father hadn't died at the hands of Prime Minister Mu, their deaths had something to do with Prime Minister Mu. There's also that dog emperor. Since he chose to protect the Mu Jia, then one day he will change the dynasty. Master, I believe that day won't be too far away. Little Mo's voice was filled with determination and deep trust in the young girl. His voice slowly echoed in the young girl's mind, filling her heart with confidence. Chapter 33. Inside the bathtub, the beautiful young girl's face was pale as she bit her lip. Her long, delicate hair flowed down her back, and she exuded a stunning beauty amidst the steam. After an unknown amount of time, the medicinal liquid in the bathtub turned from green to black. The young girl slowly opened her eyes and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air from her lips. Master, you've succeeded. You're now a low-level beginner spirit. You're no longer the good-for-nothing who can't cultivate. I'll give you another prescription in a while. Follow the prescription and make a medicinal bath. Cultivating in the medicinal bath will speed up your cultivation. Xiao Mo, who was in her soul, was overjoyed. It then began to chatter endlessly. It's a pity that there are no spiritual herbs. Otherwise, the effects would be even more obvious. Master, when will you come to the divine grimoire space and plant the herbs you've obtained last time? Yun Luofeng raised an eyebrow. Before she could answer Xiao Mo's question, Xiao Mo's voice suddenly became vigilant. Master, someone's here. Someone's here? Suddenly, Yun Luofeng's eyes sharpened. She quickly put on some clothes and leaped out of the bathtub. She then shouted sternly, "Who's there? Show yourself." A black figure slowly stepped out from behind the screen. The man's features were very exquisite, so perfect that even a god would be jealous. His chiseled features were cold and callous as he stared deeply at Yun Luofeng with his black eyes. His deep eyes made it impossible for anyone to see through his emotions. Yun Luofeng's gaze fell upon the man's soft lips. She could not help but think of the man's kiss on her lips that day. What are you doing here? The young girl's emotions gradually calmed down. Her demonic eyes stared at the man's cold features once again. There was no impatience in her voice, but it carried a sense of playfulness. You dropped this. The man raised his hand and a jade pendant hung in his hand. The word Yun carved on the jade pendant was so clear that it was reflected in the young girl's eyes. Yun Luofeng was shocked. She had indeed dropped a jade pendant that day, but she could not find it no matter how hard she tried. She never thought that it would end up in this man's hands. No wonder this man had come to the general's mansion. He had found her through the jade pendant. All right, the jade pendant has been returned to its rightful owner. You may leave now. Yun Luofeng took the jade pendant and smiled evilly at the indifferent cold man. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Is there anything else?" The man moved a few times but did not leave. For some reason at this moment, Yun Luofeng actually discovered a trace of awkwardness on his face. You saved me. He even saw my face. And then, yes, Yun Luofeng was dumbfounded. He stared dumbfoundedly at the awkward face of the guy in front of him. Was there something wrong with her ears? This cold man was asking her to take responsibility with an awkward expression on his face? Just because she saw his face under the mask? I knew it would be like this. Master, quickly accept him. He's good for you, quickly accept him. Little Mo was so excited that it was as if he was the one being asked to take responsibility. Shut up. Yun Luofeng couldn't control herself for a moment. She yelled fiercely, then looked at the man standing in front of her. I didn't rape you. Why are you asking me to take responsibility? Besides, we've never met before. Why did you look for me? Just because I've helped you once? The cold man pursed his lips and replied awkwardly, I don't know. I just feel comfortable being by your side. Chapter 34. Comfortable by her side? What kind of logic was that? Tell me, what can you do? Yun Luofeng raised an eyebrow and glanced at the awkward man with a faint smile. The man was startled and said, I can do anything. Everything. What about warming the bed? Yun Luofeng's eyes were smiling. Her voice was seductive, and the corners of her lips were still playful. At this moment, the girl was only wearing a light robe. Her snow-white thighs were exposed, captivating people's souls. Coupled with her seductive voice at this moment, the girl actually saw the cold and awkward man in front of her blush. This guy really couldn't stand being teased. I don't know how. The man was an honest and obedient child, truthfully answering Yun Luofeng's question. He paused, then said, I can learn. Yun Luofeng was stunned. If one day, a man stood in front of you and said that he wanted to learn how to warm the bed for you, would you still be calm? Then you can stay by my side as my bodyguard. Do you have any objections? The girl returned to her senses and once again returned to her seductive and languid demeanor. She smiled at the man in front of her. I'll listen to you. These 3 simple words were enough to show that this guy was not only cold and awkward, he was also a man of few words. That's right, what's your name? Yun Luofeng yawned and asked disapprovingly. 2 days ago, her grandfather had said that he wanted to find a personal bodyguard for her. She never thought that this bodyguard would come knocking on her door so quickly. Xiao. No surname? No. Yun Luofeng was stunned again. She subconsciously looked at the man in front of her, but found that there was no other expression on the man's face. She couldn't help but move the corners of her mouth and say, From now on, your name is Yun Xiao. Yun Xiao. The man murmured these 2 words and suddenly raised his head to look at Yun Luofeng. His deep black eyes became clear. From now on, I will protect you. When Yun Luofeng left the room, it was already late. She planned to find her grandfather to discuss the matter of moving to the back of the mountain and introduce Yun Xiao to her grandfather. However, she didn't expect that the old fellow still hadn't returned. So, after waiting for a while, she didn't continue to wait and returned to her room. But when she stepped into her room once again, she discovered that Yun Xiao, who had been standing in her room just a moment ago, had disappeared without a trace. Yun Xiao. Yun Luofeng frowned and called out from inside the room. Then her gaze suddenly fell on the bed. The bulging quilt indicated that a person was lying on it. The person heard his voice and crawled out from under the quilt. The man's face was handsome beyond compare, and his expression was as cold as ever. He gently pursed his thin lips, but his dark eyes were incomparably clear. Yun Luofeng's gaze moved down bit by bit, landing on his opponent's 8-pack abs. Faced with such an alluring figure, Yun Luofeng's eyes couldn't help but flash in a trance. If this exquisite man were to be sold to a brothel, the whole country would probably be overjoyed. He would be even more popular than the crown prince. Yun Xiao naturally did not know what Yun Luofeng was thinking. Her clear black eyes stared at Yun Luofeng. You asked me to warm the bed. Now the bed is warm. You can sleep. Yun Luofeng was struck by lightning until he was tender on the outside and crispy on the inside. Could it be that this fellow had misunderstood the meaning of warming the bed? And his face had turned red earlier. Was it not because he had heard the 2 words warming the bed? At this moment, Yun Luofeng suddenly realized that this fellow was actually this. Innocent and adorable? Chapter 35. Stupid girl, get out here right now. The next day, early morning. Yun Luofeng had just finished washing up when an angry roar suddenly rang out, reverberating through the entire Yun household. Everyone in the Yun household shrank their heads in fright, not knowing how this young miss had angered the general again. Yun Xiao. Yun Luofeng yawned lazily, lifted his eyes to look at the exquisite man in front of him, and walked out of the room. Let's go, I don't know what's wrong with that old man, howling like a ghost so early in the morning. Although that was what he said, Yun Luofeng could guess why the old man was acting crazy here. In the storeroom, the old man looked at the empty storeroom in front of him. A feeling of wanting to cry came over him, but he couldn't cry no matter how hard he tried. His hands trembled as he supported himself against the wall, preventing himself from collapsing to the ground. Gone. All gone. The savings of the Yun family over several generations, all squandered by that wretched wastrel. The old man wanted to cry. He suddenly regretted giving the key to the treasury to that wastrel. Who would have thought that she would squander all the silver in the treasury in just a few days? Not even a copper coin was left for him. Just then, the sound of light footsteps came from behind him. After hearing those unique footsteps, the old man's negative emotions erupted once again. His bloodshot eyes turned around abruptly, and his white hair stood on end. Damned girl, where's my money? Where did you squander all my money? The young girl was dressed in white, standing in front of Yun Luofeng, her expression innocent. Didn't you say that I could spend the silver in the treasury as I pleased, and that it wouldn't matter even if I took it all away? The old man was instantly silenced. This was indeed what he had said, but he had only said it casually. Who knew that this girl would really take it all away? That was the savings of the Yun family over several generations. Was it easy for him to save up until now? Grandfather. Yun Luofeng patted the old man's shoulder and said with a smile, as the saying goes, money is not brought with you in life, and not taken with you in death. There's no point in leaving so much silver. It's all for me in the end anyway. Why are you so angry over this silver? Looking at the young girl's devilishly charming smile, the old man nodded in agreement. Yun Luofeng was his only precious granddaughter. The silver would be left for her sooner or later. Ugh. No. This damned girl actually led him into a corner. Stupid girl, don't interrupt me. Tell me honestly, where did all the money go? The old man was so angry that his beard was trembling. He no longer had the imposing and severe aura that Yun Luofeng had when they first met. Yun Luofeng replied matter-of-factly, I spent it all. What? The old man's eyes widened. He had originally thought that Yun Luofeng had taken all the silver and hidden it somewhere else. He had not expected her to say that she had spent it all. Stupid girl, tell me honestly. What have you been doing these past few days? Why did he spend so much money? If you don't give me a reasonable explanation, I won't let you off today. I've said it before, I'm a doctor. I've spent all that silver on medicinal herbs. Medicinal ingredients? Damn girl, do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? What kind of medicinal herb is so expensive that it caused you to spend a whole 25 million taels of silver? That's 25 million, not 250. The old man almost cried. His heart was trembling. A prodigal, the biggest prodigal in the world. Yun Luofeng shrugged her shoulders and smiled evilly. Medicinal ingredients that allow me to cultivate, is it worth this price? Chapter 36. What? The old man was stunned. He stared unblinkingly at the young girl's confident face, unable to return to his senses for a long time. What did she just say? Medicinal herbs that would allow her to cultivate? Is there something wrong with my ears? Did you just say that you can cultivate now? I must have misheard. How could this be? Even if the imperial physicians were willing to help, they might not be able to cure her. However, very soon, the old man confirmed his suspicions. The young girl's face was still filled with a wanton and demonic smile. Her eyes were filled with arrogance and confidence. Her white robes fluttered gently in the breeze. Her fine black hair flowed like a waterfall. She was a peerless beauty. However, the old man's focus was clearly not here. Spiritual energy. That's right. He could feel the presence of spiritual energy in his precious granddaughter's body. A low-level beginner spirit? He asked in astonishment. Feng, are you? You can cultivate now? That's right. Yun Luofeng nodded gently. I've been able to cultivate since yesterday, but I didn't have the time to tell you. Do you still think that these medicinal herbs are expensive? After 3 seconds of silence, a maniacal laugh rang out and echoed throughout the entire Yun manor. The maids and guards of the Yun Manor trembled with fear. They simply could not understand what was wrong with their general. One moment he was angry, the next he was laughing. Could it be that he had gone mad? At this moment Yun Luofeng, who was laughing with his head thrown back in the storeroom, was completely unaware that his actions today had been spread by a few people, causing the entire imperial city to think that the great General Yun Luo had gone mad. Furthermore, he had been driven mad by that good-for-nothing Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng did not speak and leaned lazily against the door frame, quietly waiting for the old man to have his fill of laughter. Finally, the old man stopped laughing. However, his raised eyebrows still showed the excitement in his heart. It's not expensive at all. As long as you can cultivate, forget about 25 million taels. Even if you ask me to sell the Yun family's ancestral home, I'll sell it immediately to raise the money for you. No, I have to tell your second uncle this good news. Speaking of second uncle, Yun Luofeng paused. Grandfather, take advantage of the night to secretly send second uncle to the back of the mountain. Tomorrow I will also move there. Also, I have someone I want to introduce to you. From the very beginning, Yun Luo had seen the man standing next to Yun Luofeng, but he had not had the time to ask her in his rage. Now that he heard Yun Luofeng's words, he knew that this was the man that his granddaughter wanted to introduce him to. It had to be said that this man was really exquisite. His appearance and figure were not inferior to the crown prince at all. In fact, they were much better. He's Yun Xiao. He'll be my personal guard from now on. You're saying that this fellow is the guard you've chosen? Yun Luo was shocked. Whether it was his appearance or temperament, this man did not seem like a guard. Most importantly, with Yun Luo's strength, he was actually unable to see what realm this man's strength was at. From the looks of it, this man was either a piece of trash who could not cultivate, or he was unfathomable. Yun Luo was leaning towards the last possibility. This man's aura was too strong. How could a man with such a strong aura be a piece of trash? Feng, where did you kidnap this exquisite man from? Yun Luo glanced at Yun Luofeng as he asked. The word exquisite in the old man's words caused Yun Xiao to frown in dissatisfaction. If it had been anyone else who dared to humiliate him like this, they would have been beheaded long ago. But he was Yun Luofeng's grandfather. So he endured. Chapter 37. Yun Luofeng's eyes flashed with an evil light. I saved him once, so he's here to repay the debt of gratitude. She had indeed saved him once, but she had not bothered to treat him and had only casually fooled him. Who asked this fellow to hit her at that time? If it was not for the fact that he was a spiritual entity, she would not even have saved him and would have left him to fend for himself. Yun Luofeng laughed out loud. My granddaughter is truly capable. Not only did you get rid of your useless physique, your medical skills are also brilliant. A few days ago, Prime Minister Mu even said that no one would marry you in the future, and that you can only be a concubine. I think it won't be long before the people proposing will break through the doorstep. Prime Minister Mu? Yun Xiao secretly remembered this name, but her face did not change and her expression was as cold as usual. That's right, grandfather. Yun Luofeng smiled and extended her hand towards Yun Luofeng. Do you have any silver on you? Give me 1,000 taels first. Even though Mu Shan was the son of the Prime Minister's residence, it would not be easy for him to move 50 million taels. She did not even know where the deposit he had given her came from. So, if she wanted to wait for the remaining 45 million taels, it would take a few more days. Cough cough. The old man almost choked on his own saliva. He subconsciously covered his chest to prevent the banknote from being snatched away. What are you trying to do? This 1,000 taels is all I have. Don't ruin my last bit of retirement money. Give it to me. Yun Luofeng crooked her finger. This 1,000 taels is of no use to you. Give it to me first and I'll help you fill up your treasury in a few days. Are you speaking the truth? The old man was skeptical, but he still took out the remaining banknote from his bosom hesitantly. His fingers trembled as he said, Little girl, I'm warning you. This is the only silver left in the general's mansion. If you don't help me fill up the treasury in a few days, I'll cry in front of you. Looking at the old man's aggrieved expression, Yun Luofeng's forehead couldn't help but twitch. She helplessly raised her hand to receive the banknotes from the old man and walked out of the treasury under his tearless expression. The spirit-gathering liquid could help spiritualists cultivate more conveniently. As long as one soaked in this spirit-gathering medicinal liquid, a spiritualist would be able to break through even faster. It was a treasure that countless spiritualists dreamed of thousands of years ago. However, the spirit-gathering elixir had already been lost in history. There weren't many people on the continent who knew about this medicinal formula. Luckily, Yun Luofeng had an encyclopedia like Little Mo. Hence, this elixir wasn't a difficult task for her. Unfortunately, Yun Luofeng hadn't cultivated any spirit herbs yet. The spirit-gathering elixir made from ordinary herbs was much weaker. Medical pavilion. Countless pedestrians walked in and out of the city, and it was extremely bustling. Yun Luofeng had just walked to the entrance of the medical pavilion when the green-robed man who had received her last time walked out again. He had a polite smile on his face. "Miss Yun, what medicinal ingredients have you come to buy this time? Does your medical pavilion have these medicinal ingredients?" Yun Luofeng handed over the paper in her hand. The green-robed man took the medicinal formula and scanned it carefully. He smiled and said, "Miss Yun, the medicinal ingredients you bought this time aren't very expensive. The total price is only 800 taels. Hence, I've decided to give the medicinal ingredients to Miss Yun as a gift. I won't charge you any silver." It had to be said that this medical pavilion was very good at doing business. Yun Luofeng had spent 25 million taels here. Hence, even if she didn't charge for the medicinal ingredients this time, the medical pavilion would still make a lot of money and attract customers. Chapter 38. Thank you. Yun Luofeng squeezed the 1,000 taels of silver in her hand and suddenly asked, "By the way, does the medical pavilion accept medicinal liquids?" "Medicinal liquids?" The green-robed man was taken aback. "That depends on what kind of medicinal liquid it is. If the medicinal liquid is not bad, the medical pavilion will give you a reasonable price." Yun Luofeng lowered her eyes. The spirit-gathering medicinal liquid should be quite effective, right? Why, Lady Yun wants to sell medicinal liquids. The green-robed man smiled politely, but he did not think much of it. Who in the world does not know that Lady Yun is a good-for-nothing? However, she has been obsessed with medicine for some reason and has spent a lot of money. Furthermore, he had heard that the general was furious at home today. It was probably because of this wastrel Yun Luofeng. Based on her state as a beginner, what use would the medicinal liquids be? "I don't have any plans for now. If I want to sell medicinal liquids, I will come to the medical pavilion." At this time, the other people from the medical pavilion had already brought her medicinal ingredients. After she accepted the ingredients, she turned around and left under the contemplative gaze of the green-robed man. Her long figure slowly disappeared from the street. Once she returned to the general's residence, Yun Luofeng went to the back of the mountain and ordered that no one was to disturb her. Then, she went to the world of the temple. Inside the temple, Xiao Mo looked at Yun Luofeng with a sad and pitiful expression. She looked like she was about to cry. "Master, you haven't come to see me in a long time. Also, when are you going to eat up that exquisite man?" Yun Luofeng glanced at her. "Come and help me. I want to plant the medicinal herbs that I obtained last time in this field." No, why do I feel like this field has expanded? This medicinal herb was a gift from the medical pavilion when Yun Luofeng first went to the medical pavilion to buy medicinal herbs. As she had been too busy recently, she only had time to plant it now. "Master, now that you've successfully become a martial practitioner, the medicinal field will definitely expand. In the future, as you grow stronger, the range of the medicinal field will also increase." Little Mo's mouth twitched. "Also, the herb you obtained last time was only the most common type of medicinal herb that slowly heals injuries. For this kind of medicinal herb, you only need 10 days to turn it into a spiritual herb. Didn't you say that it would take 3 months to turn a medicinal herb into a spiritual herb?" "Stupid master." Little Mo almost jumped up. "I was talking about the medicinal herbs for the medicinal bath last time. Those medicinal herbs can be considered precious. It will take at least 3 months to cultivate them into elixirs. Maybe even longer. The medicinal herbs in your hands are nothing. You can harvest them in 10 days. Yun Luofeng suddenly realized that she had misunderstood Little Mo's intentions last time. Yun Luofeng picked up a stalk of herb from the ground and turned to Little Mo. "Help me with the shovel. I will plant the herbs." Now let's use these herbs to test out how powerful this herb field is. Little Mo let out a sound of agreement and walked over to Yun Luofeng with a shovel. Then she helped the young girl plant the herbs in the medicine field. When Yun Luofeng left the divine grimoire space, it was already quite late. Because she had previously ordered that no one was to disturb her, no one had come to the back of the mountain to disturb her. Then she walked towards the kitchen. Now that she had finished planting the herbs, it was time for her to start making the spirit-gathering liquid. Chapter 39. In the smoke-filled kitchen, a young girl dressed in white was busying herself. The fragrance of medicine wafted through the kitchen. She held a fan in her hand and gently fanned the flames beneath the medicine pot. It's about time. The young girl stopped what she was doing and picked up a handkerchief from the side. She then placed it on the lid and carefully lifted it. This spirit-gathering liquid should be enough for me to use for 5 days. She slowly curled the corners of her lips and a devilish smile appeared on the young girl's peerless features. I wonder how much I can sell this spirit-gathering liquid for? Just then, a low and hoarse voice sounded from behind her. She could even sense the unique aura of a man emanating from the other party's body. Your bath is ready. Yun Luofeng was startled. She turned around to look at the man standing behind her and raised an eyebrow. Didn't I order Qing Yan to do this? You've taken Qing Yan's job, what's she going to do now? The man looked at Yun Luofeng in confusion, not understanding why she was unhappy. He thought for a moment and said, if you don't like it, I won't do it. Yun Luofeng smiled gently at the man's expression. Yun Xiao, do you know what you look like? I don't know. The man furrowed his brows. He really did not know what he looked like. All these years, aside from his subordinates, the only people he had come into contact with were his enemies who had died by his hands. Of course, these people did not dare to be too presumptuous in front of him. Blockhead, you're just like a dumb piece of wood. Yun Luofeng took a few steps towards the man and narrowed her eyes. She sized up the expressionless man in front of her, as if she was admiring a piece of art. However, it's precisely because you're an uncarved piece of wood that I want to give you a good makeover. The man's grim face finally showed a slight change. Even though the change was very small, the observant Yun Luofeng caught it. His expression made Yun Luofeng want to tease him even more. Yun Xiao, you're good in every aspect except for a little. You don't understand the affairs between a man and a woman. Hence, I want to transform you into a more flirtatious one, then sell you to a brothel. With your figure and looks, if you were to go to a brothel, I'm afraid that even the most handsome man in Long Yuan country, the crown prince, wouldn't be able to compete with you. At that time, I'll be able to make a fortune. If Yun Zhao's subordinates were to hear Yun Luofeng's words, they would probably tumble down hard. This woman actually wanted to sell her master to a brothel for money? One must know that their master's temper wasn't very good, and his methods were also outrageous. Countless people had died in his hands. Otherwise, those in the mainland who knew his master's name wouldn't call him a demon. But she actually dared to say such words in front of master? Yun Zhao's expression froze and his expression gradually cracked. The moment he thought about being surrounded by those disgusting women, he felt an urge to kill someone. Ha ha ha! Yun Luofeng could not help but burst into laughter. The space between his brows was filled with mirth. Yun Xiao, I thought that your expression would always be cold and grim. I didn't think that you'd be able to destroy that cold and grim expression with just 2 sentences. Now you're acting like a normal person. She patted Yun Zhao's shoulder, picked up the bottle of spirit-gathering liquid and walked out of the kitchen. The man's eyes followed Yun Luofeng's figure. It was only at this moment that he suddenly came to his senses. I've actually been fooled by her? If Yun Zhao's subordinates were here, their jaws would probably drop in shock. Faced with Yun Luofeng's teasing, my master isn't angry at all? Is this still my master who kills people like scything flax and has no regard for the world? After all, there was once a woman who had accidentally seen my master's face under his mask, and had even tried to seduce my master with her beauty. My master didn't even think twice before killing her with one stroke of his sword. Not to mention the fact that she wanted to sell me to a brothel for money? Chapter 40. At the back of the mountain. In a low house, the girl in white slowly took off her clothes and walked to the side of the steaming bathtub. She carefully poured the medicinal liquid from the porcelain bottle into the bathtub and waited until the bathtub turned milky white before she slowly stepped into the bathtub. The moment she stepped into the bathtub, she felt a wave of spiritual energy rushing towards her. It made her feel refreshed and even her mood improved. Little Mo, I'm going to start cultivating now. Keep an eye on the surroundings for me and tell me immediately if anyone comes. Yes, Master. Little Mo agreed happily. Although it could only stay in the divine grimoire world, no living person's aura could escape its notice. Master, I've sensed 3 auras in the back of the mountain. One belongs to your second uncle, one belongs to Yun Xiao, and the last one is unknown. However, that person is with Yun Xiao and has no ill intentions. Yun Xiao? Yun Luofeng was startled. Since he has no ill intentions, just ignore him. The mountain was overgrown with weeds. Yun Xiao looked at the man in gray who was kneeling in front of him and said in a cold and unfeeling tone, I've already said that no one is allowed to enter the residence of Yun without my orders. Have you forgotten? As he spoke, an oppressive aura emanated from Yun Xiao's body. If Yun Luofeng had been here, he would have realized that none of the spiritual beasts reared on the mountain behind the Yun Manor dared to move as they crouched on the ground in fear. Lin Xiong wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He had only come to report something, but who knew that he would be subjected to such a powerful force from this terrifying man? That's right. How terrifying. In the eyes of his subordinates, the man in front of them was a terrifying demon. Anyone who offended him would suffer a fate worse than death. Master, it's like this. Lin Xiong swallowed and replied in a trembling voice. Recently, a talented woman has appeared on the mainland. She admires you and has spread the news that she's the only one in the world who's worthy of you. She even said that she can conquer you. I'm here to ask you if we should deal with this matter. Kill her. These 2 words were simple and easy to understand, but it also showed how cruel this man was. Lin Xiong was stunned. Even though she knew that her master was cruel and merciless, she did not expect that he would ask them to kill her. As if he was very dissatisfied with Lin Xiong's words, the man's cold eyes glanced at her. Lin Xiong shuddered and hurriedly lowered her head. Yes, Your Majesty. Yun Xiao seemed to have thought of something as she involuntarily glanced at the bungalow not far behind her. Also, send someone to investigate the grudge between Prime Minister Mu's mansion and the Yun family. Tell me everything. Yes. Lin Xiong cupped her fists and replied. He really couldn't understand why a person as high and mighty as his master would come to a small country like Longyuan country to be the bodyguard of the daughter of a general. Even if the emperor saw his master, he would have to kowtow to his master a few times. Of course, even if Lin Xiong was 100 times more courageous, he would not dare to ask this question. Otherwise, he would not be able to live. Yun Luofeng, who was cultivating in her room, naturally did not know what was happening outside. She also did not know that ever since she had left a few answers in the medical pavilion, she had caused a sensation in the medical pavilion. Fools, a bunch of fools. In the back hall of the medical pavilion, Elder Rong's face was filled with anger. The people standing in front of him were so frightened that they did not even dare to breathe loudly. Chapter 41. I asked you to find someone, but you still haven't found her after so many days. What use do I have for you? Elder Rong slammed his fist on the table. In an instant, the table broke into pieces, sending shivers down everyone's spines. They could all imagine the power that would be produced when that fist landed on their bodies. Elder Rong, I have an idea. A man in a gray robe stepped out from the crowd and joined his fists. He then said respectfully, that divine doctor had left an answer under the Datura poisons question last time. This proves that she's very interested in the complicated illness. Why don't we use that age-old question and stick it on the wall? If she appears and solves the question, we'll be able to find her. Elder Rong's anger had mostly dissipated, but his expression was still ugly. Then let's do as he says. Later I'll give you a difficult problem. Stick it on the wall and use it to lure her out. 4 days later, in a bungalow at the back of the Yun family's mountain, Yun Luofeng opened her eyes. She could feel the power surging through her body, and her lips curled into a devilish smile. Beginner spirit stage. In 4 days, she had advanced from a beginner spirit stage to an intermediate spirit stage. If word of this got out, it would definitely shock the entire Longyuan country. There's only one set of spirit gathering potion left. Looks like I'll need to refine it. Forget it, I'll go to the medical pavilion and see how much I can sell it for. Being a doctor is a money-burning profession. The 45 million silver that Mu Shen owes me is not enough. Yun Luofeng muttered to herself. Just as she was about to stand up from the bathtub, she suddenly realized that a small figure was sticking out its little butt and licking the bathwater that she had splashed on the floor, not even sparing the water in the corner. Little Mo, why didn't you tell me that something came in? Yun Luofeng stared at the gluttonous little fellow and raised her eyebrows. Not long after, little Mo's guilty voice could be heard in her mind. Master, this is just a gluttonous gold-seeking rat. It was attracted by the spirit-gathering potion. It's not harmful to you, so I didn't warn you. He would never tell his master that the hamster's aura was too weak, which was why he couldn't sense it. Gold-seeking rats like to eat spirit-gathering potion? Yun Luofeng stared at the snow-white gold-seeking rat, her eyes darting around. The gold-seeking rat doesn't eat spirit-gathering elixir. It likes to eat medicinal herbs. Furthermore, it relied on medicinal herbs to increase its strength. However, this gold-seeking rat had never eaten medicinal herbs before, so its strength was still very low until now. Master, you found a treasure this time. Little Mo's voice was filled with excitement. This gold-seeking mouse has a very pure bloodline. If you bring it with you, it can help you find extremely expensive herbs. Of course, you have to be careful. The gold-seeking rat is gluttonous. If it finds the medicinal herbs, it will eat them all. The gold-seeking rat's ability is to find valuable medicinal herbs. Of course not. The gold-seeking rat itself was also very strong. Its teeth could bite through the toughest sword in the world. Its claws could dig through the general's residence in 2 hours. Due to its small size and sharp teeth, it would not be at a disadvantage even if it were to fight against spiritual beasts such as wolves. The prerequisite is that this gold-seeking mouse can grow up. The more little Mo spoke, the more excited she became. However, if the gold-seeking rat were to grow up, the amount of medicinal herbs needed would be as high as a mountain. Because of this, not many people on the mainland can successfully cultivate a strong gold-seeking rat. Because of this, people generally think that the gold-seeking rat's advancement is slow and its strength is weak. Yun Luofeng was silent, but his pair of demonic eyes were filled with light when he looked at the gold-seeking rat. Chapter 42. Master, you have a cheat, you have a cheat. It's very difficult to cultivate the gold-seeking rat with ordinary herbs, but you have spiritual medicine. If you let the gold-seeking rat eat spiritual medicine as food, it will grow rapidly. On this mainland, the average noble child would tame 1 or 2 spiritual beasts as a companion. It wasn't that Yun Luofeng didn't have this idea in the past, but she didn't have the slightest bit of power. Even if the rest of the Yun family helped her tame the spiritual beasts would one day betray her. The gold-seeking rat, who was happily eating, finally felt a gaze fall on it. Thus, it stiffly turned its head bit by bit. In an instant, it met a pair of smiling eyes. Squeak! The gold-seeking rat squeaked and wanted to rush towards the door. Unfortunately, before it could rush out, it was caught by a hand. Squeak, squeak, squeak. In Yun Luofeng's hand, the gold-seeking rat struggled for a while, then bit Yun Luofeng's finger. However, under its attack, Yun Luofeng's skin didn't even break. His demonic eyes stared at it with a faint smile. The gold-seeking rat finally gave up all hope and gave up struggling. Its expression was full of dejection. It could already imagine its miserable appearance when it was made into a hamster meal. Little fellow, how about following me? Just as the gold-seeking rat was in despair and too lazy to move, Yun Luofeng slowly opened his mouth to ask. The gold-seeking rat's expression seemed to have been reignited. It blinked its eyes and stared blankly at the beautiful woman's demonic smile. What did she mean? Wouldn't it be made into a hamster meal? I know you can understand me. Follow me and you'll have medicine to eat every day. How about that? If it was any other person who heard you say that you would have medicine to eat every day by following me, they would definitely give you a good beating. But the gold-seeking rat was different. After hearing Yun Luofeng's words, its pair of black eyes lit up. It hurriedly nodded its head like pounding garlic and squeaked. Then I'll give you a name. Yun Luofeng played with the gold-seeking rat in his hand, an evil smile appearing in his eyes. Seeing that your color is similar to milk, I'll call you Milk Tea from now on. Squeak! The gold-seeking rat responded. As long as it had medicine to eat every day, it didn't care what name it was given. This spirit-gathering liquid is what's left after I used it. It's not very useful for you to increase your strength. In a bit, I'll go to the medical pavilion to buy some medicinal ingredients for you, but... Yun Luofeng paused. In the future, when you follow me, you can't hold anything back. For example, if you pick up any medicinal ingredients outside, you can bring them back to show your filial piety to me. After saying this, Yun Luofeng hid the milk tea in his sleeves and walked out of the room. 4 days. She had been in seclusion for 4 whole days. In these 4 days, other than Yun Xiao, who came to deliver food, and second uncle, who needed her to treat his legs with acupuncture, she did not see anyone else. Miss, you finally appeared. The maidservant Qing Yan saw Yun Luofeng walking down the back of the mountain. She quickly walked over and hurriedly reported, Miss, that Mu Shun came again? Mu Shun? He has already collected the 45 million taels? Yun Luofeng gently stroked his chin and said, Qing Yan, I'm going to the medical pavilion now. Tell him to leave the silver behind. As for other matters, tell him to wait for me in the back courtyard tomorrow. It was already late, she did not have the time to bother with Mu Shun. Qing Yan was stunned for a moment. She then looked at Yun Luofeng, who was walking towards the back door. Her large eyes filled with confusion. Ever since the miss had failed to commit suicide, it seemed that she had changed too much. In the past, she chased after His Highness the Crown Prince all day, but now she ran to the medical pavilion all day. Chapter 43. This time, Yun Luofeng did not head straight for the medical pavilion. When she was near the medical pavilion, she took advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention to her, and quickly slipped into the alley. She then covered her face with a snow-white veil that she had prepared in advance, concealing half of her face. Unless a very familiar face appeared in front of her, most people would never be able to discover her true identity. Milk tea, hide in my sleeves and don't come out. Yun Luofeng stuffed Milk Tea's little head back into her sleeves after she had done all this. Her lips curled into a demonic smile. I'm not powerful enough at the moment, so I can't let anyone know that I'm in possession of the spirit-gathering elixir. Otherwise, I'm afraid that before I can grow stronger, that dog of an emperor will casually accuse me of a crime and have my entire family executed. Xiao Mo understood the logic behind Yun Luofeng's words, so he did not make a sound this time. After Yun Luofeng threw down these words, he headed towards the noisy medical pavilion. Oh, little sister, are you here to buy medicinal herbs from the medical pavilion? Look at you, you're so afraid of being seen that you're not even showing your face. Just as Yun Luofeng was about to step into the medical pavilion, a charming laugh rang out. It was an extremely beautiful woman. Her beauty and Yun Luofeng's beauty were 2 different extremes. Yun Luofeng was so beautiful that he could topple cities. His demonic charm and languid demeanor carried an air of nobility that no one dared to approach. This woman, on the other hand, was bare-chested. Her every frown and smile was extremely flirtatious. It was as if one look from her could steal a person's soul. Forget about men. Even a woman would feel their entire body go numb and unable to move when they heard her bewitching voice. Of course, based on appearance alone, Yun Luofeng would definitely win. However, no one could match this woman's flirtatious charm. Shopkeeper Lin isn't here? Yun Luofeng looked at the flirtatious woman who was twisting her slender waist as she walked towards him with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Shopkeeper Lin was Lin Xiao, the person who had always received Yun Luofeng. This was because Lin Xiao was in charge of receiving guests in the medical pavilion. Hence, this woman did not suspect Yun Luofeng's words. He. The woman giggled seductively and spoke coquettishly. For the sake of the medical pavilion's better performance, I will be the one to receive guests during this period. Little sister, if you need anything, you can tell big sister. Big sister will take good care of you. I heard that your medical pavilion accepts medicinal liquids. I would like to ask, how much is the medicinal liquid in my hand worth? Yun Luofeng took out the porcelain bottle in his hand and gently shook it. Little sister, can you tell me about the effects of this medicine? The woman took the porcelain bottle from Yun Luofeng's hand, her smile becoming even more charming. The spirit-gathering medicinal liquid can make a spiritualist's cultivation twice the result with half the effort, but it's only useful for those below advanced spiritualists. Once one becomes an advanced spiritualist, it'll lose its effect. The smile on the lady's face froze, and even her breathing became heavier. Are you saying that this is a spirit-gathering liquid that can help spiritualists cultivate? That's right, it's indeed effective for spirit masters below the high spirit master level. The specific method to use it is to mix this spirit-gathering liquid with water. When spirit masters cultivate in the water, it can help them gather spirit qi. Yun Luofeng nodded, confirming the woman's question. Following the young lady's words, the charming expression on the woman's face disappeared completely and was replaced with a serious expression. Little sister, I can't make a decision for you about this spirit-gathering medicinal liquid. How about this? I'll ask Elder Rong, and when the time comes, Elder Rong will decide what kind of price to give you. Is that okay? Chapter 44. All right. Yun Luofeng nodded. I hope you can hurry, I still have some time. Hearing this, the lady did not delay any further and quickly ran towards the inner room. Her anxious expression was seen by those who did not know better, and they would have thought that something serious had happened to her. In the inner room, Elder Rong, who was talking to a middle-aged man, was interrupted by the sound of a door being pushed open. He frowned, and when he saw the charming lady walking towards him, his expression gradually eased up. Yor, what happened to make you so flustered? Fangya quickly walked in front of Elder Rong. Elder Rong, a young lady came to sell the medicinal liquid. As I could not make the decision, I came to ask Elder Rong for help. Medicinal liquid? You can make the decision on this matter. There's no need to ask for my opinion. Elder Rong shook his head and said impatiently. If it was not Fangya, he would have lost his temper long ago. It's like this, Elder Rong, my old man asked me to come here to train, but he did not give me a lot of funds. I'm afraid that the funds I have are not enough to buy this medicinal liquid, so I came to ask Elder Rong for help. What? Elder Rong stood up in shock. You said that the funds you have on hand are not enough to buy a medicinal liquid? First tell me, what is that medicinal liquid? I remember that you have a few million taels of silver with you, right? Although Fangya had come here to train, she was still the granddaughter of that old man. How could he not give her a few million taels of silver? Furthermore, she could also use a few million taels of silver from the medical pavilion, so why could she not buy a medicinal liquid? Elder Rong, that medicinal liquid is the spirit-gathering medicinal liquid. Fangya's voice was filled with excitement. It is said that it can allow martial masters below the high martial artist level to train with twice the results with half the effort. Think about it, in this Long Yuan country, most people are middle martial artists, especially the descendants of the royal family. Which one of them does not want to train faster? If we can buy this spirit-gathering medicinal liquid, will we have to worry about not selling it for a good price? Elder Rong was completely stunned. Luckily, he had lived for so many years, so he was not as impulsive as Fangya. So, he suppressed the excitement in his heart and extended his hand towards her. Give me the spirit-gathering medicinal liquid, I want to see if it really has such an effect. Only then did Fangya react. She hurriedly placed the porcelain bottle in front of Elder Rong. This is the spirit-gathering liquid. Elder Rong stretched out his trembling hand and held the porcelain bottle in front of him. He slowly opened the lid and put it to his nose to smell it. Immediately, a fragrant aroma wafted into his nostrils, shocking him and making him feel refreshed. This spirit-gathering elixir does have the effect of aiding cultivation. Elder Rong took a deep breath. Although his expression was calm, his heart was in turmoil. However, there's a flaw with this spirit-gathering elixir. I felt it just now. This spirit-gathering elixir's effects are too strong. Even if it has the effect of gathering spiritual energy, it can't be consumed. Otherwise, you'll die for sure. Fangya was slightly stunned. She suddenly realized that Elder Rong had misunderstood her, so she quickly explained, Elder Rong, this spirit-gathering liquid is not meant to be taken orally. It's meant to be used as a medicinal bath. When a martial artist takes a bath while cultivating, it can gather spiritual energy. So that's how it is. Elder Rong was suddenly enlightened. His heart was filled with excitement. Yeah, we must buy this spirit-gathering medicinal liquid. I'll give you the authority now. You can use 10 million taels of silver from the medical pavilion. At the same time, ask that lady if she has any more spirit-gathering medicinal liquid. We'll buy as much as she has. Chapter 45. Yes, Elder Rong. After saying this, Fangya retreated. In the main hall of the medical pavilion, Yun Luofeng, who had been waiting anxiously, saw Fangya walking over quickly. When she saw the excitement on the other party's face, she knew that the deal was a success. Little girl, Fangya took a deep breath and walked towards Yun Luofeng. Your spirit-gathering fluid has been verified by Elder Rong. The medical pavilion will buy it for 10 million silvers. 10 million silvers? Yun Luofeng was stunned. Spirit-gathering fluid that only cost 800 silvers could be sold for 10 million silvers? This money was too easy to earn. Fangya saw her expression and thought that she was not satisfied with the price. She said anxiously, Little girl, the price given by the medical pavilion is very fair. However, I have to admit that after we get the spirit-gathering fluid, we will sell it to others at double the price. However, the medical pavilion is in the business of reselling and we earn the difference in price. Yun Luofeng returned to her senses and smiled devilishly. I thought that it was easy for me to earn money. I didn't expect the medical pavilion to be even more unscrupulous. Fangya blushed. Although this was the truth, she still felt a little embarrassed when someone said it out loud. However, Yun Luofeng did not make things difficult for her. After all, if she wanted to sell the spirit-gathering fluid, she could only do so through the medical pavilion. Otherwise, she would face the danger of her identity being exposed. Little girl, if you have any more spirit-gathering fluid in the future, you can continue to sell it at my medical pavilion. I will give you a fairer price. Fangya winked at Yun Luofeng. I wonder if little girl has time to go out for a meal with me? She had to be on good terms with a doctor who could produce spirit-gathering fluid no matter what. I don't have time. Yun Luofeng snatched the banknotes from Fangya's hand and turned to leave after saying this. Watching her leave, Fangya smiled helplessly. What a domineering little girl. If this kind of person belonged to the medical pavilion, then the medical pavilion would become even more powerful. Fangya was about to walk towards the inner hall when she suddenly stopped in her tracks. Her beautiful eyes widened as she stared at a question on the question wall. Who answered this question? This question was the age-old problem that Elder Rong had found previously. It was to lure the person who could solve the datura flower poison. Therefore, Fangya had been paying attention to this question for the past few days. She did not expect that the question would be answered not long after she left. Upon hearing Fangya's words, a servant in the medical pavilion replied, Lady Fangya, the veiled lady you received earlier answered the question. This servant did not have a high position in the medical pavilion, so naturally, she did not know the importance of this matter. Hence, even though she had noticed Yun Luofeng's answer, she had not informed Fangya in time. Fangya's body trembled, and her heart was filled with regret. If she had known this would happen, she would have left the little girl behind. Now that there was a sea of people, where could she go to find him? The efficiency of the medical pavilion was very high. Within a day, the news about the spirit-gathering solution had spread throughout the entire imperial city. It even caused a sensation in the entire imperial city of Longyuan country, the crown prince's residence. In the courtyard, the sound of a zither could be heard. Gao Ling stared intently at the beautiful lady who was playing the zither. His eyes were filled with an endless gentleness. This gentleness was something that he would never show to Yun Luofeng. Towards Yun Luofeng there was only disgust. Chapter 46. The song ended. Mu Wuxuang stopped what he was doing, gazing tenderly at the man who was focused on her, smiling. Your Highness the Crown Prince, do you know about the recent events in Longyuan country? You mean the spirit-gathering liquid? Gao Ling was well aware of the meaning behind Mu Wuxuang's words. This spirit-gathering elixir is indeed miraculous, and with the assurance of the medical pavilion, it will not go wrong. If you like it, this crown prince will buy it for you. What do you say? Mu Wuxuang hesitated for a moment, then slowly said, Your Royal Highness, I heard that General Yun also wants to buy the spirit-gathering medicinal liquid, and is now borrowing money from everywhere. The spirit-gathering medicinal liquid is too precious. If Yun Luofeng can cultivate, then it's fine to give it to her. But the problem is that she can't become a martial practitioner, so what's the use of the spirit-gathering medicinal liquid? Isn't it a waste? Wuxuang, don't worry. I will instruct all the officials in Longyuan country not to lend any money to the general's mansion. Who asked a prodigal daughter to appear in the general's residence? I heard that Yun Luofeng squandered all of the Yun family's assets. This caused General Yun to fly into a rage. Gao Ling harumphed coldly, his expression disdainful. Luckily, I broke off my engagement with this wastrel. Otherwise, one day, my crown prince's residence will be ruined by her. Mu Wushuang smiled, his eyebrows were full of smiles. Crown prince, because of you, Yun Luofeng's reputation is so bad, and he is so pitiful. So I want to find a marriage for her. When the time comes, I will need your help, crown prince. As long as he thinks of that peerless face, Mu Wushuang can't help but grit his teeth in hatred. Therefore, she must find a marriage for that woman. At the very least, it was a marriage that would make her wish she was dead. Wushuang, I'll leave the decision to you. Gao Ling stared at Mu Wushuang with a gentle gaze. Initially, I didn't want to care about that good-for-nothing's life or death. However, since you've spoken up for her, I'll make the decision this time. If it weren't for your help, based on that good-for-nothing Yun Luofeng's physique, she would never be able to find someone willing to marry her. Mu Wushuang's smile became more and more alluring. Before Jailing could see it, a vicious light flashed in his eyes. Yun Luofeng, you will forever be inferior to me. His talent was inferior to mine, and his ability was inferior to mine. Even her ability to control men is inferior to mine. In this life I will live a prosperous life and live a life that everyone envies. As for you, you are only qualified to stand at the bottom and look up at my existence. I'm going to marry a powerful person in the world, but you still need me to choose a husband for you. As for the spirit-gathering elixir, I must obtain it. As for you, you don't even have the right to drink my bathwater. In the study of the Yun family, Yun Luofeng had just walked in when he heard the old man cursing and even the sound of things being kicked. A bunch of ungrateful things. You've always pretended to be close to me. Now I'm just borrowing money from you. You run away faster than dogs. Don't let me see you again. Borrow money? Yun Luofeng froze for a moment, then walked in. She looked at the messy study, and a wicked smile appeared on her face. Grandpa, what's going on? Why are you so angry? Humph, it's all because of those bastards, especially a few of them. I've helped them before, but now that I'm in trouble, I've asked them to lend me money, but they've all rejected me. The old man was still in a fit of anger, his beard trembling as he cursed. Why do you want to borrow money? Is the 45 million taels I asked someone to put into the treasury not enough? What 45 million? The old man was about to continue cursing when he suddenly regained his senses. His eyes stared fixedly at Yun Luofeng as his breathing quickened. Did you just say it was very much? Our family has 45 million taels? Chapter 47. Yun Luofeng stared at the old man in shock. You didn't know? He looked as if he was truly shocked that the old man was unaware of this. Didn't Qingyan tell you? Mu Shen had sent me 45 million taels yesterday. I've already asked her to use it to fill up the treasury. An eerie silence fell over the room. Following Yun Luofeng's words, the grim atmosphere in the study instantly quietened down. Yun Luofeng stared fixedly at the young girl in front of him. Even his breathing had become labored. Fenger, can you explain to me what's going on? No one knew the surging emotions in the old man's heart. He had to use all his strength to suppress his heart, which was about to jump out of his chest. However, his trembling body still revealed the emotions in his heart. Grandfather. Yun Luofeng raised her head and stared at the old man's twitching face. Her features no longer displayed her usual demonic charm. In its place was a solemn expression. I will avenge my parents' death. The first step in my revenge is Prime Minister Mu's mansion. Hence, when Mu Shan had sought me out for treatment, I had extorted a large sum of money from him. This was only the beginning. This was only the beginning. In the future, she would gradually cause the Prime Minister's mansion to decline and trample the imperial power beneath her feet. Of course, to avoid scaring the old man, Yun Luofeng did not say this out loud. Ha ha ha. The old man was stunned for a moment before he burst into laughter. How many years has it been? How many years has it been since I've had such a smooth life? Ever since Fenger's parents had died, he had been living in this sullen state. Now, his precious granddaughter had actually set the Prime Minister's mansion up. If the Prime Minister's mansion were to find out about this, they would certainly be half dead from anger. Yun Luofeng shrugged her shoulders. You still haven't told me why you're borrowing money. Hearing this, the old man's expression instantly turned serious. My precious granddaughter, don't you know? Recently, a bottle of spiritual gathering liquid has appeared in the medicine pavilion. There's only one bottle, so many members of the imperial family and nobles want to buy it. Grandfather, of course, does not want to fall behind, so he's borrowing money from everywhere to buy this spiritual gathering liquid. Spiritual gathering liquid? Yun Luofeng was shocked. She never thought that her grandfather would borrow money to buy the spiritual gathering liquid for her. In an instant, a warm current flowed through her heart. I don't need that spirit gathering liquid. Seeing the old man's expression when he spoke of the spirit gathering elixir, Yun Luofeng thought for a moment and decided not to tell him, in case the old man's heart couldn't handle the shock. You silly girl, what nonsense are you saying? Now that we have so much silver, I must obtain this spirit-gathering medicinal liquid no matter what. Yun Luo glared at Yun Luofeng as he spoke in a bad mood. Yun Luofeng smiled helplessly. He had sold the spirit-gathering elixir for 10 million taels of silver. He couldn't possibly let this old man buy it back for double the price, right? Wouldn't that be a huge loss? Take a look at my strength. Feng don't cause trouble, grandfather already said. Before he could even finish his sentence, Yun Luo was frightened by his unintentional glance. His entire body stiffened, and his eyes widened in shock as he stared at Yun Luofeng in disbelief. Intermediate beginner spirit. You've broken through? 5 days ago, this girl was only a low-level beginner spirit. In just 5 short days, she actually broke through to the intermediate spirit? Fuck. How is this trash? She's clearly a genius among geniuses. Grandfather, do you think that with my speed, I still need to buy some spiritual gathering liquid? Yun Luofeng crossed his arms in front of his chest and smiled devilishly at Yun Luo. Then, under his shocked gaze, he turned and left. Chapter 48. Miss Mushan has been waiting for you the entire morning. Just as Yun Luofeng stepped out of the study, servant Qing Yan hurriedly greeted him. It doesn't matter if I let him wait for half a day. Yun Luofeng smiled devilishly. He raised his hand and pinched Qing Yan's apple-like cheeks. Then, under the aggrieved gaze of the servant, he walked towards the backyard. Let's go, let's settle Mushan's matter as soon as possible. I still have other things to do. In the backyard, Mushan paced back and forth anxiously. All of a sudden, he caught a glimpse of the beautiful young lady who was walking towards him. His eyes lit up and he almost pounced on her and licked her lips. Godly doctor, you're finally here. I've been waiting for you here for a long time. Yun Luofeng glanced at him. You've waited for too long? Do you have any complaints? How would I dare to have any complaints? Mushan was so frightened that his entire body trembled. He hurriedly replied, even if you let me wait for a month, I wouldn't dare to have any complaints. I wonder if we can start the treatment now? Yun Luofeng walked into the room and said without turning his head, come in. After today you can be like a normal man. Mushan was stunned. He had originally thought that the treatment would take a long time. Who would have thought that the godly doctor's treatment would be different? He only needed 1 day. Thinking of this, he suddenly became excited and hurriedly stepped into the room. The medical pavilion was already crowded with people. The high officials and nobles of Longyuan country had blocked the entrance of the medical pavilion. The guards inside the medical pavilion had rushed out to maintain order. General Yun, you actually came here. I heard that your Yun family's fortune has been squandered away by Yun Luofeng. You were even angered to the point of insanity by him. In the end, you still shamelessly came to the medical pavilion. Haha, in my opinion, you've wasted your energy. Buying the spirit-gathering liquid for Yun Luofeng is just a waste. Within the crowd, someone with sharp eyes spotted Yun Luofeng and couldn't help but burst into laughter. Yun Luofeng's expression was very ugly, but he stood there without saying a word. Although Yun Luofeng had already asked him to give up on the spirit-gathering liquid, he was still unwilling. What's more, his granddaughter was so talented. With the addition of the spirit-gathering elixir, she would be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort. Unfortunately, Yun Luofeng did not expect Yun Luo to be so stubborn. Otherwise, she might have mentioned the matter regarding the spirit-gathering liquid. With my orders, no one will lend money to General Yun. But why did General Yun come here? Crown Prince Gao Ling glanced at Yun Luo and his eyes darkened. A sharp glint flashed across his eyes as he turned to the girl in yellow beside him and asked with concern, Wu Shuang, you don't look too well today. Did something happen? I'm fine. Mu Wushuang shook his head and gently lowered his eyelids. She didn't tell His Royal Highness that this morning, her grandfather, Prime Minister Mu, wanted to use the silver from the treasury to buy the spirit-gathering liquid for her. Who knew that the treasury would be robbed? He had lost 45 million taels of silver. And this was the majority of the Prime Minister's mansion's wealth over the years. After everything that had happened, it would be strange if she could look good. Wushuang, if there's anything you need, just tell me. I will help you. Gao Ling looked at Mu Wushuang tenderly as his eyes flashed with a hint of absent-mindedness. Only such an outstanding woman could be worthy of him, who was equally outstanding. That good-for-nothing Yun Luofeng was not worthy of becoming his wife. Chapter 49. Crown Prince Wushuang is really fine. It's just that she didn't sleep last night because she was trying to find a good husband for Yun Luofeng. She's a little tired now. I was worried that Yun Luofeng would be too arrogant. I'm afraid that she wouldn't accept the husband I picked for her. Mu Wushuang would never tell the Crown Prince about what happened in the Prime Minister's mansion. Naturally, he pushed all the blame onto Yun Luofeng. When Gao Ling heard Mu Wushuang's words, his face darkened. You've worked so hard for her, and she still dares to be so ungrateful. Does a good-for-nothing like her have the right to be arrogant? Wushuang, I believe in your ability. Once you've chosen a suitable candidate, I will ask my imperial father to decree the marriage. Even if she doesn't want to, she has to. What right does a good-for-nothing have to be picky? It's already good enough that someone is willing to marry her. But if it wasn't for Wushuang, who would be willing to marry a good-for-nothing? As Gao Ling and Mu Wushuang conversed, they did not forget to signal to the others to continue making things difficult for Yun Luo. Normally, due to Yun Luo's strength and status, they wouldn't dare to go overboard. However, now that they had received the Crown Prince's signal, all of them stood out in order to curry favor with the future monarch, facing Yun Luo with stern and righteous expressions. General Yun, I say that you're not very kind. It's a waste to use the spirit-gathering elixir on a good-for-nothing like Yun Luofeng. It's better to leave it for someone who needs it. So, I advise you to give up on competing with us. In Long Yuan country, other than the officials and nobles, there were also the 4 major families. The person who spoke was the head of the Lin family, Lin Ying. Bullshit, who are you calling a good-for-nothing? Yun Luo was so angry that his beard trembled. He glared fiercely at Lin Ying. My granddaughter is more outstanding than anyone else. Whoever dares to say that my granddaughter is a good-for-nothing, I'll kick them out of here. Lin Ying was shocked by the old man's imposing manner. But when she remembered that the Crown Prince was present, this old man did not dare to be presumptuous. She mustered up her courage and said, General Yun, are you angry because of embarrassment? Or did I poke a sore spot? Haha, who doesn't know that the #1 genius in Long Yuan country belongs to His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince? The Prime Minister's mansion's Mu Wushuang's talent is also on par with the Crown Prince's. Other than these 2 people, who else can be called outstanding? The old man's body trembled as he clenched his fists tightly. A powerful aura emanated from his body. However, at this moment, an evil voice rang out from behind him, causing his body to freeze. Didn't I tell you? I don't need this essence-gathering potion. Why did you still come? This voice was filled with helplessness. The old man couldn't help but turn his head. His gaze fell on the white-clothed girl. Feng, why are you here? I'm here to buy medicinal herbs. What Yun Luofeng had said was the truth. The medical pavilion had a record of all the medicinal ingredients that were sold. Hence, after she had sold the spirit-gathering medicine yesterday, it was not convenient for her to continue buying medicinal ingredients. Otherwise, her identity would be discovered from the medicinal ingredients that she usually bought. General Yun, I think your granddaughter is more sensible. She knows that she's a good-for-nothing. Using the essence-gathering potion on her is a waste. You should go back and rest. Why waste money? Lin Ying burst into laughter. Her disdainful eyes swept across Yun Luofeng's beautiful face. What's the use of a beautiful woman? In the end, she's just a vase that looks good but is useless. No man would be willing to have such a vase at home. Chapter 50. Hey, what's going on here? Why are you guys quarreling? Just then, a seductive voice rang out, causing all the men present to feel their bones go numb and their bodies to feel weak. Under the perverted gazes of the crowd, Fangya walked over. The corners of her lips curled up in a seductive manner. Her seductive eyes were filled with a dense amorous feeling. With every frown and smile, one could see the myriad of amorous feelings she possessed. Humph, it's all because of this good-for-nothing from General Yun's mansion. As a good-for-nothing, she still dares to come to the medical pavilion to steal the spirit-gathering medicinal liquid. We just don't want the spirit-gathering medicinal liquid to be wasted by this good-for-nothing. That's why we asked her to leave. Now that you're here, let's chase this good-for-nothing out of here. Fangya raised an eyebrow and her gaze fell upon Yun Luofeng. She gently raised the corners of her lips and walked towards the young girl. Anyone who comes is a guest. Our medical pavilion doesn't have the habit of rejecting guests. Especially when you're such a beauty. Tiskate. I don't think any woman in Longyuan country can compare to this little girl in terms of looks. Mu Wuxuan's eyes darkened. He obviously did not like what Fangya had said. What did she mean by Yun Luofeng is the most beautiful woman in Longyuan country? Could it be that I, Mu Wuxuan, am inferior to this idiot? This smell is so fragrant. Fangya moved closer to Yun Luofeng and gently sniffed. Her seductive face lit up with a mesmerizing smile. She was obviously making a perverted gesture, but it looked so pleasing to the eye. Since you're here to buy medicinal herbs, follow me in first. Yun Luofeng nodded her head. She walked to Yun Luo's side and raised the corners of her lips devilishly. A bottle of spirit-gathering medicinal liquid costs 20 million gold coins. It's too expensive. If you want to buy this spirit-gathering medicinal liquid, then we'll be making a huge loss. So go back first and wait for me. When the time comes, I'll give you a surprise. After some thought, Yun Luofeng decided to tell Gao Ling about the spirit-gathering medicinal liquid. Even if this old man could not handle it, it was better than spending so much money to buy the spirit-gathering medicinal liquid. Hee. Gao Ling heard Yun Luofeng's voice and laughed mockingly. Yun Luofeng, you may not be as annoying after your failed suicide attempt, but you're too arrogant. You actually said that 20 million gold coins is too expensive for the spirit-gathering medicinal liquid? And he suffered a great loss? Let me tell you, even if it was 30 million taels of silver, there would still be people who would buy it. Only someone like you who doesn't know what's good for you would think that the spirit-gathering medicinal liquid is too expensive. Yun Luofeng ignored Gao Ling's words and walked into the medical pavilion. Yun Luofeng, who was walking in front, didn't notice that before Fangya left. She looked at Gao Ling as if he was an idiot. Your Highness. After seeing his granddaughter leave, Yun Luo's face darkened. Don't think that I don't know why the ministers in the imperial court are unwilling to lend me money. I originally wanted to endure it for a while, but I didn't expect you to become more and more excessive. Today you have looked down on my granddaughter. One day you will regret it. Extremely remorseful? The crown prince sneered. Abandoning Yun Luofeng was the best decision he had ever made, and he would never regret it. These are the herbs I need today. After entering the medical pavilion, Yun Luofeng took out a piece of paper and placed it in front of Fangya. Fangya's lips curled into a smile and she took the paper from Yun Luofeng. She winked and said, You've earned so much money for our medical pavilion. I won't charge you for these herbs. I'll give them to you for free. Yun Luofeng looked at Fangya in shock. What do you mean by that? Had her identity been discovered? Impossible. This was the second time he had come into contact with Fangya. How could she have discovered it? Chapter 51. Miss Yun, we won't beat around the bush. You were the woman who brought the spirit-gathering liquid to us a few days ago. Fangya swayed her slender waist and walked in front of Yun Luofeng in a flirtatious manner. You should know that no matter how a person changes their appearance, they cannot change the scent on their body. Moreover, I am very sensitive to scent. Yun Luofeng stroked his chin and smiled evilly at Fangya. This is the first time I found out that Miss Fangya's zodiac is actually a dog. In front of a shrewd person like Fangya, there was no point in hiding anything. He might as well admit it openly. I have one more thing to ask you. Fangya covered her lips and smiled. Were you the one who cured the Mandara flower's poison? A look of astonishment flashed across Yun Luofeng's dark eyes. He thought for a moment and asked, "How did you find out?" "So it was you." Fang Ye's heart leaped with joy. "Miss Yun, come with me, Elder Rong wants to see you." "Elder Rong?" Yun Luofeng was stunned when he heard this name. "Elder Rong wants to see me? I've heard that Elder Rong of the medical pavilion is very arrogant. Even the descendants of the imperial family might not receive him when they visit. Why does he want to see me now?" "Miss Yun, you'll understand if you come with me." In the cabinet, Elder Rong gently held the teacup in his hand and said to the middle-aged man next to him, "It seems that this spirit-gathering liquid has caused quite a stir. It's a pity that there's only one bottle. By the way, Murong, have you found the whereabouts of the person I asked you to find?" Murong looked helpless. "Right now, we only know of two characteristics about the mysterious doctor in our team. Firstly, according to Miss Fang, the mysterious person is a young woman. Secondly, the woman is dressed in white. However, in the vast sea of people, I'm afraid it will be very difficult to find someone based on these two characteristics. We have to find her even if we can't. Even if we have to mobilize all the resources of the medical pavilion. The whereabouts of this mysterious doctor is related to the survival of the entire medical pavilion. Hence, he must find her." Knock, knock, knock. A series of knocks came from outside the door. Before Elder Rong could ask anything, Fang Ye's seductive voice sounded from outside the room. "Elder Rong, I've found the doctor who cured the Mandara flower's poison." Boss Rong's hand trembled, and he almost spilled the tea in his hand onto the ground. He stood up from his chair with a swoosh. Due to his excessive excitement, his voice trembled slightly. "Let her in quick." As soon as he finished speaking, the door to the room was pushed open. Fang Ye, dressed in red, stepped into the room first. Following that, a figure dressed in snow-white robes behind Fang Ye entered Elder Rong's sight. The young girl was extremely beautiful. Her skin was white like jade, and her beauty could topple a city. A smile hung on the corners of her lips, and it was evil and lazy. Her brows revealed an innate arrogance and domineering aura, causing others to be unable to ignore it. Yun Luofeng? As the #1 trash in Longyuan country, it was impossible for Murong to not have heard of Yun Luofeng's name. Now that he saw that the person Fang Ye was looking for was her, one could imagine the shock in his heart. However, for some unknown reason, the Yun Luofeng today seemed to be slightly different from the Yun Luofeng he had seen in the past. "You're the doctor who solved the mandala flower poison?" Astonishment flashed across Elder Rong's eyes. Of course, he wasn't astonished by Yun Luofeng's identity. Rather, although he had long known that the mysterious doctor was very young, he didn't expect her to be so young. Looking at her age, she was probably only 14 or 15 years old. Chapter 52. "That's right." Yun Luofeng nodded lightly and crossed his arms as he leaned against the door. His tone was lazy and wanton. "If you have anything to say, just say it. I still have other matters to attend to. If you want me to treat your illness, I won't do it for less than 50 million. What was arrogance and confidence? Yun Luofeng had perfectly interpreted it. Murong, who had wanted to explain Yun Luofeng's identity to Elder Rong, stood rooted to the ground. If you can really cure the Mandara flower poison, forget 50 million. Even if you want 100 million, we'll give it to you. Elder Rong looked at Yun Luofeng seriously. He was very confident in Fang Ye. Since Fang Ye had found someone, there should not be any mistakes. "Oh," Yun Luofeng rubbed his chin and smiled lazily. "Your medical pavilion is really polite. If I don't take 100 million, I'd be letting you down. How about this? I'll cure you of the Mandara flower poison, and you'll give me 100 million. Also, I want to change the distribution of the spirit-gathering elixir in the future. 1 bottle of spirit-gathering elixir will be sold for 20 million, and I want 19 million. Elder Rong was stunned. He had just casually mentioned 100 million and this girl was actually going to raise the price so rudely? Wait. Suddenly, Elder Rong regained his senses and stared at Yun Luofeng in astonishment. "What did you mean by that? You said that the spirit-gathering elixir is yours? Also, you have other spirit-gathering elixirs?" Fang Ye could not help but laugh. "Elder Rong, I forgot to tell you that the genius who answered the age-old question and the seller of the spirit-gathering elixir are the same person. They're both this girl." Elder Rong's entire body trembled. His eyes filled with disbelief. He never thought that something like the spirit-gathering elixir would come from the hands of a 14-year-old girl. Girl, if you can cure the Mandara flower poison, we'll agree to any of your requests. During this time, Elder Rong had tried to cure the poison himself. Unfortunately, there were still a few points that he did not understand. Therefore, Yun Luofeng had to personally cure the poison. All right, Yun Luofeng glanced at Elder Rong. But I don't want too many people to know about this. When you need the antidote, you can send someone to the Yun family to find me. Elder Rong's eyes flickered. Little girl, may I ask you one last question? Who is your master? I'm sorry, but my master doesn't like others to know of his existence. I didn't answer your question. Yun Luofeng yawned and slowly straightened his body. If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving first. I'll send the rest of the spirit-gathering liquid to the medical pavilion. After speaking, Yun Luofeng turned to leave. When she reached the door, she paused and said without turning her head, "That's right, Fangya. I'll have to trouble you to deliver the herbs I need to me at the general's residence." After saying this, she left. Murong, who is this Yun Luofeng? Elder Rong asked in a daze as he stared at the disappearing figure of the girl. Elder Rong, this Yun Luofeng is the only child of the general's residence. She was born a waste and unable to cultivate. She used to be engaged to the crown prince, but not long ago, the crown prince broke off the engagement with her. Moreover, I heard that the crown prince and prime minister Mu Wushuang are very close. Mu Wushuang? Elder Rong frowned. The woman who wanted to see me several times? Yes, it's her. Chapter 53. Elder Rong grunted coldly when he heard this. Even though Yun Luofeng can't cultivate, her medical skills alone are enough to make all the powerhouses in the world work for her. Not to mention that she now possesses something like the spirit-gathering elixir. I studied it all night yesterday, and still couldn't figure out the formula for the spirit-gathering elixir. If this gets out, the crown prince will probably cry and beg for her forgiveness. Fangya couldn't help but laugh. Elder Rong, did you know that just now the crown prince mocked Yun Luofeng for not knowing what was good for her, and that she wasn't worthy of using something like the spirit-gathering elixir? I really want to see his expression in the future. It will definitely be very interesting. Did he really say that? Elder Rong was very surprised. After a moment of silence, he said, I've met the crown prince before and thought that he was someone important. Now it seems that the crown prince is nothing more than this. Fangya Murong, from now on, if anyone from the royal family comes looking for me, I will not meet them. Even if the emperor comes, I will ignore him. This time, not to mention Murong, even Fangya was very surprised. Elder Rong, I know that you admire Yun Luofeng, and are even more grateful that she was able to cure my lord. However, for Yun Luofeng to reject the members of the imperial family, I'm afraid. Fangya, you don't understand. Previously, I tried to get information from Yun Luofeng, wanting to know who her master is, but she refused to tell me. She even said that her master doesn't want outsiders to know her name. As such, I can guess that her master is definitely that person. Elder Rong narrowed his eyes. That fellow's medical skills are excellent and his temper is strange. If Yun Luofeng is really his disciple, we definitely can't offend Yun Luofeng. Fangya was stunned. Elder Rong, are you saying that Yun Luofeng is that genius doctor's disciple? I'm not very sure, but in this world, aside from him, who else could have such a disciple? Master was poisoned by the datura flower and originally wanted to seek treatment from that genius doctor, but he refused. If Yun Luofeng really did cure Master, I can guarantee that he is that genius doctor's disciple. Elder Rong raised his head to look at Fangya and instructed her seriously. Fangya, now that we have an antidote, I need to go back. I'll leave the matters here to you. Remember, you need to please Yun Luofeng. But you don't have to be too deliberate. If you're too deliberate, it will make people unhappy. Yes, Elder Rong, I understand. Fangya's eyes were no longer as charming as they used to be. Instead, they were filled with determination. Yun Luofeng had just walked into the Yun family's hall when he saw the old man sighing in despair. The old fellow clearly saw Yun Luofeng walking into the main hall. He stared at her with a resentful gaze. Fenger, shouldn't you give grandfather an explanation? Why don't you let me fight for the spirit-gathering liquid? Grandfather knows that you have outstanding talent now. But if you have the spirit-gathering elixir, your cultivation will definitely speed up. Yun Luofeng stopped in his tracks, shrugged and said, "It wasn't easy for me to earn 10 million from selling the spirit-gathering elixir, and now you want to spend 20 million to buy it for me. Grandpa, even if you want to squander, you shouldn't do it this way. Do you think it's easy for me to earn pocket money? You stupid girl, you actually said that your grandfather is a wastrel, you?" When the old man heard the word squander, he flew into a rage. He was just about to teach this little girl a lesson when he realized what she meant. His jaw dropped in shock. "What did you just say? You were the one who sold the spirit-gathering liquid?" Chapter 54. Yun Luofeng glanced at the old man. "Your reaction seems to always be slower than others." In the past, if the old man had heard Yun Luofeng's words, he would have flown into a rage. But now his mind was in a daze. How could he hear a single word that Yun Luofeng had said? That was the spirit-gathering liquid that had caused a sensation in the entire imperial city. What's more, when he had gone to fight for the spirit-gathering liquid today, he had been humiliated. But he never thought that the spirit-gathering liquid would come from his granddaughter. This intense surprise made his heart tremble. His entire body swayed and he almost fell to the ground. "I was afraid that you would become like this, so I chose to hide the matter of the spirit-gathering liquid from you for now. I never thought that you would be so wasteful that you actually wanted to buy the spirit-gathering liquid for double the price." Yun Luofeng shook her head and sighed. "By the way, grandfather, your power is now at the junior high spiritualist level, right?" The old man's emotions slowly calmed down. When he heard Yun Luofeng's words, he nodded. His head was still a little dizzy. "I feel that you're on the verge of a breakthrough." Yun Luofeng stroked her chin. She seemed to be afraid that the old man had not been shocked enough, so she added, "Grandfather, do you remember the master I mentioned to you before? He was the one who gave me this spirit-gathering liquid. After a while, I'll raise your power to the intermediate high spiritualist level." Yun Luofeng knew that the old man would definitely be curious about the origins of the spirit-gathering liquid. So she once again brought up the fictitious master. Boom! The old man's heart, which had just calmed down with great difficulty, finally collapsed when he heard Yun Luofeng's words. He staggered and fell heavily onto a wooden chair, panting heavily. "Are you all right?" Yun Luofeng jumped in fright and hurriedly walked over to the old man's chest. Even though she had been mentally prepared, she never thought that the old man's heart would be so strong. Actually, from another perspective, if a beggar who was bullied every day suddenly received a windfall of 100 million, the beggar's reaction would be even more intense. Those with weaker hearts would probably faint immediately. "You damned girl, are you trying to make life difficult for me? Are you trying to scare me to death?" Yun Luo finally recovered, and the first thing he said was to scold Yun Luofeng fiercely. "In the future, if you have any problems, tell me one by one. You fucking two scares squeezed together. I'm already lucky not to be scared to death by you." Yun Luofeng smiled evilly. "I'm just worried that I'll scare you again when I help you increase your strength in the future, so I might as well tell you both at the same time. Feng is what you said true? Can you really help me increase my strength?" Yun Luo's eyes lit up. "If I can increase my strength, I will be one step closer to the #1 fighter in Long Yuan country." The #1 expert in Long Yuan country was a high martial artist like Yun Luo. However, that expert was an advanced high martial artist and was on a completely different level from Yun Luo, who was a low-level high martial artist. "Of course it's true." Yun Luofeng nodded. "But I need time. Give me enough time. Not only can you break through, I can also help second uncle recover his strength." Ha ha ha. The old man laughed heartily. His hearty laughter filled the entire Yun family's house. "You're really worthy of being my granddaughter. I'm very glad that you and the crown prince have broken off the engagement. That crown prince is only suitable for a woman like Mu Wushuang. How can he be a match for my precious granddaughter? Moreover, I believe that it won't be long before the crown prince regrets his choice." Chapter 55. In the drawing room, the old man stroked his white beard, his face flushed with success. "There's one more thing that I need you to help me with." Yun Luofeng's lips curled into an evil smile. "Since you've returned your 1,000,000 troops to that dog emperor, now our Yun family needs to establish our own power." The old man was silent for a moment. "Feng, you need to think this through. We need to recruit people to establish our power. This will cause too much of a commotion, and it may arouse the emperor's fear. At that time, if the royal family oppresses us, our Yun family will not be able to rise again in our current situation. Grandfather, I've already thought about this. A light flashed across his black eyes and the smile on Yun Luofeng's lips deepened. Not long ago, I beat up Mu Shan on the streets and my reputation as a hedonist has already spread. Since that's the case, why don't I be a hedonist even more thoroughly? You can tell others that I threw a tantrum at home and forced you to recruit 100 guards and 100 maids for me. As for this recruitment, you can ask that dog emperor to help you complete it. The old man was stunned and said hesitantly, Feng'er, that's not very good, is it? You want to recruit people to establish an army that belongs to our Yun family. If you ask the royal family to help you with this with his wariness, he will definitely choose some people with low talent. I don't care about the talent of those people, as long as their bodies are not flawed and they are under the age of 18. It didn't matter if they were low talent. She had the divine encyclopedia of medicine. No matter how stupid they were, she had a way to improve their talent. Feng'er, there's one more thing that you haven't considered. If you ask the emperor to recruit people for you and he sends in spies, then everything you've done will be known to him. Faced with Yun Luofeng's question, Yun Luofeng smiled. His eyes were full of confidence. As long as he dares to send in spies, I dare to take in spies. As long as he dares to send in spies, I dare to take in spies. How much confidence did she have to be able to say such arrogant and unruly words? Yun Luofeng sighed. At this moment, he suddenly realized that he really didn't understand his granddaughter at all. Feng'er, I'll enter the palace in a moment and ask the people in the palace to help me recruit people. All right. Yun Luofeng blinked his eyes. Grandfather, when you meet the emperor later, don't forget to blackmail him. Everyone says that the Yun family's fortune was squandered away by me, so go and prove this rumor. The old man was speechless. This was probably why Yun Luofeng wanted the people from the palace to help her recruit people. There was no time to lose. Yun Luo didn't stay any longer. After changing into his court attire, he quickly got someone to prepare a sedan chair and hurriedly set off for the palace. When he entered the imperial study, he discovered that other than Emperor Gao Tu, even the crown prince was present. A look of hesitation appeared on his face, but his expression quickly changed. Compared to the radiant look he had when he was in the general's residence, the current him seemed a bit dispirited. Old general, why have you come to see me? When Gao Tu saw Yun Luo's expression, he sneered in his heart. He didn't even need to think to know that Yun Luofeng had caused trouble again. Your Imperial Majesty. Yun Luo knelt on the ground with a thud. His elderly figure seemed thin and frail. My granddaughter thinks that there are too few servants in the general's residence and that it doesn't suit her status as the eldest Mississippi. Thus, she asked me to help her recruit 100 guards and 100 servant girls. But I'm already old, how can I work so hard? So I've come to ask for your Imperial Majesty's help.